There we go. I wondered why the music wasn't playing, and for some reason it decided that the music was not visible. Well, that's a little bit bad of it. So let me change to a slightly better scene, because that's not really the one I was expecting you to be looking at. I was clicking on other things, and it's supposed to be in a specific mode so that I can click around the scenes to work the music out, and that what should have stayed on screen was the start. And at this point I was going to be on my usual running screen, but that's not even the lace pillow screen. I've been doing a bit of fiddling. So let me transition to the lace screen. So I have now added a more zoomed in and zoomed out, so hence you can see my hand twice, option. Now the zoomed in one is the more default option, i.e. the big one, just on the simple grounds of it makes a bit more sense, because the individual stitches, you can see the bobbin movements in the top right hand corner, but the actual progression of the work you will be able to see a bit better. I am also proud to say I wound the bobbins. Go me. So we can finally, if we wish, start on that last little bit. However, grand reveal, here is where we left it yesterday. Now, you may have noticed that at the end of yesterday, I had done something with the settings that made the green, well, less green. It made it slightly grey. I couldn't recreate those settings for love nor money. But I have changed it so that, for example, if I zoom in, you will notice that it is much more visible to see the work. It is clearer, the white is white, it's not really glary, you can see in the individual threads. The only problem is the white balance when it's zoomed out. And it doesn't sort that out. Which is why, when it's like this area up here looks really, really white. Now, if I go back to what I did the other day, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. If I go back to what I did yesterday, which was add that, see grey bits, you can see that this has gone white while the rest of it has gone kind of muddy. Now you can see each of the individual threads. This looks great, but if you zoom in, you can see that there's like a halo around some of it, and some of the threads look really, really wonky. But also, when it's zoomed out, it makes it look blurry, and I really wasn't convinced that this was a good thing. So I had a bit of a fiddle trying to lessen it a bit, but all that did was kind of seemingly make it worse, to be honest. The little worms that I spoke about yesterday, which is that kind of TV static look, I mean, I can do quite a lot to deaden the green, but as you can see, this corner here just looks really, really blurry, and it's almost like there's a rectangular patch that it's decided to make really, really bright. Now, obviously it is the shaded area of the, kind of this area, but it just screams weird. So I tried to sort it out with various settings, but it just didn't work for me, and so I've reverted back to the normal raw footage. But I have given you the bobbin overview, but obviously I can be more zoomed in, and you can still have some element of where the bobbins are, but the big part of the picture will show you better, not perfectly, but better, what is going on. Now, I can arguably make it darker, I feel. In fact, let me Come on, you join in, join in, join in, join in. So I can make the light darker, but that just means you can't see at all. So, whereas before, you may recall, it was putting it back so that it was automatically adjusting, so basically it didn't matter what light setting I had. All it meant was I couldn't see what I was doing. So, yeah, there really doesn't seem to be a good answer. Now, I'm sure I did order, and I will have to look, some brown crafting paper, and maybe that will be helpful. I will dig that out and see if that's slightly better than green. This is non-reflective. These are laminated, as you can tell by the edge here. Sort of along here you can see that it's laminated, but these are not glossy ones, so it's not because the light's reflecting, otherwise you wouldn't see anything. But it does just seem really unfortunate that that bit's really bright, even though it's a ring light, so it's not like it's got a spot. And in fact, the ring light, that's almost the centre of the ring light. Not quite. Probably about here is centre of the ring light. But it's just unfortunate that it's not easy to sort out. And short of a HDR expensive, overly complicated camera, and bear in mind this is a digital SLR camera, worth a fair few quid. What can I do, right? There really isn't a lot I can do about it for the moment. So, but I did feel that this would give you a more fighting chance, shall we call it. And of course it's a bit weird for me now because it's not straight, and I have this thing about it being straight. There you go. So I think today we're going to go a little bit more with the more lace making, less talking, because we didn't get very far yesterday, and I kind of would like to get to the end of this while I'm still young enough to remember what I was aiming for. So time for me to shut the heck up. Now let me see where those two are those two are those two, which means you two can sneak under here and be out of the way, because you will not be needed for a long time yet. You can be tucked under there. Now, we won't be using you for a while, so we will park you out of the way. I need to concentrate more. That's the other thing we discovered yesterday when we ran through, let's call them the many mistakes that I have made so far, which were really apparent. Now I've pulled some pins out. That, frankly, I suck. And so, as a result of my inevitable suckiness, I really do need to pay a lot more attention to what I'm doing. Now, quite a few of you are the required bobbins for the next chunk. So, let's move you down. You are not. And let's see. Now, you are the end bobbin. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see. Now, you may recall, as we worked diagonally this way, we had 3 bobbins in, and you'd pick one up, so you kind of had 4, and then you drop one off and have 3 again. We've currently got 4. And we're at the corner. So, and we need to add at the next pin on the right, this pair. So we will need to drop this pair off at this side, but for the whole way down then, we will feel like we've constantly got 4 pairs of bobbins, whereas before we felt like we had 3. It is kind of the same, because if I I know this is my working pair, but if I drop them out, there's 4 there. One is the working pair, so it is actually 3 with a 4th one. It just doesn't feel like it because, well, it just doesn't feel like it. So, because you have to work the first pair and throw them out, whereas the other way round, you kind of throw them out and then work your way back. So it is a perception issue, but it does make it feel, because obviously I've got 4 pairs here and there's a potential 5th one, which will be the new pair. But there aren't 5 pairs in this collection, and I didn't top my cloak glass up before I started. That was a stupid plan, wasn't it? Right, so let's work my way across. And I am now regretting my choices already. Why am I regretting my choices? Because I didn't check that they weren't crossed. But it looks like I was right, so that's fine. So these pair need to take a holiday already. And it can join those up here, out of the way. I need a pin. Time for my pin collection. Holy, holy, holy. Holy ho. And I missed a thread. That's not the pin I want for left. Oh, come on. These things are so tight. I want that one. No, that was 2. Alright. Swear word, swear word, swear word. Try and put that through the hole. Success. This is really not good for patience. So, right. You see, we've got 4. Now, when we get to the other end, no, that's right, you throw them out afterwards. It's because you throw out afterwards, I think, going this way. Because obviously you need to have, like the corner one, you need it to have worked in to go out, so it comes out afterwards. I can't throw it out now and work with 3, because I need to work that one and then throw it out. So it's just, it's like the tallies. It does my head in, and it makes my brain hurt, and it's kind of, you know, like the tallies. The more I think about it, the more it doesn't make sense, and then my brain kind of spirals into a pickle, and I'm left sitting there going, how did this ever work? How can this ever make sense? And the answer is we can draw it out on a piece of paper, and it becomes much more obvious as to how it all works. Trying to make sure I haven't gone around the wrong side of the pin, which I have, because pins are annoying. Here we go. You two leave the company, and I need 2 more. And this one that doesn't want to lie down, because this is really stiff, it likes flopping down, but it doesn't. If I show you, it'll flop down like this, but it doesn't like being straight. It kind of has a rough point at this point, and it's not because it's even catching, it's just not in the mood for that. Which means, of course, that it doesn't sit straight, which means working with it is more complicated. Well, that was clever. I managed to knock my pins off into my lap. Oh, well, I nearly had a couple of 100 pins stuck to my good self. That would not be a good plan. Don't need to be doing that. So I asked slightly earlier this evening a question to you all. At what point does something handmade cease to be handmade? So clearly, I'm sitting here with a gazillion pins and a shitload of string and a lot of bobbins that are driving me insane. This is clearly handmade. If I grab a ball of wool, some knitting needles and sit there going clackety clackety clack, I will have knitted a hand knitted item. If I grab a sewing needle, some thread and some cloth and go uppy downy, pokey pokey poke, I will have hand sewn it. No one will disagree at this point. The question becomes later. So, a hand-powered sewing machine, like my really old Singer that I used to have, I don't know what happened to that because it used to be in my old house and then it seemed to magically disappear. But, you know, a hand-powered sewing machine, so there is no electricity, there is only your good self to power the up and downing of the needle, probably counts as handmade because, well, without you, literally nothing happens. It can't run away from you because the moment you take your hand off moving it, it stops moving. And so it is very much hand-powered. Now, obviously, you are not doing the sewing, the machine is doing the sewing, but, well, even with lace making, there are tools, there are bobbins, there are pins. So, a hand-powered sewing machine, almost without doubt, counts as handmade. An electric sewing machine where maybe you rest your foot on a pedal and it moves or does not. Well, that arguably feels a little more grey because while you control it and directionally, and so therefore to a large extent it is still humanly powered. My sewing machine, for example, expensive thing that it is capable of embroidery, machine embroidery. And to do that, in all the videos, I will point out, it's not quite as simple in reality, but in all the videos, you centre the cloth, you pick a pretty picture, and hit go. And it goes chonk, 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 chonk. And out comes the embroidered outcome. While you sit, copy, watch a show, because sometimes it can take a long time depending on what you're doing. It can take like an hour or so. I mean, it's not a quick thing. But some of them, depending, if you're doing a couple of, if you're monographing something with a letter or two, it is quite simple. If you're doing a flowery thing or a big thing, it takes a lot longer, obviously. But you then sit there going, well, if all I did for that was, almost vending machine style, print a pretty picture, put my thing in a hoop so that the machine can move it, and hit go. Well, it's not quite handmade now, is it? Well, it is, because it's not factory made, but it's also not really handmade. And part of my strangeness in life is that, to me, an electric sewing machine is very borderline handmade because, as I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, because you are more like a car. You steer the car, but the car does the work. So you are not, while you are travelling, you are not the one putting in all the effort. You are the operator. And when you become an operator, are you really the craftsman, or is the machine? So to me, an electric sewing machine is borderline. I think it depends a little on what you do with it. So, for example, if I took an electric sewing machine and sewed me a patchwork quilt, to me, that is not handmade. Because there was a heck of a lot of sewing, and the whole principle of it was the sewing, and the machine did that. If you make an item and for example, I finish my neck curtain and I've hand sewn, for example, all the squares together, but I machine on a tape to give it strength at the top so you can hang it, I would still call that handmade on the simple grounds of majorly huge, practically all the time was spent hand making it. It just had a machine finish to strengthen one edge, right? So I would probably deem that handmade, although hand sewing it on would be better for distinction. But if you've made an 8 foot, I mean, bear in mind I made an 8 foot by 8 foot patchwork quilt that then had another 8 foot by 8 foot one on the back, so it was double sided, different colour schemes each side, but I hand sewed every one of those chuffing little hexagons, right? Every frigging one. And it was, I think from memory, 36 hexagons by 36 hexagons to make the 8 feet. Yes, I am anally retentive because I made that in the 90s. But I would argue that obviously mine was distinctly handmade, well, because I hand sewed every last wretched one. But if you'd done it on the machine, it's not factory made, but it's also not really handmade. Yes, you picked the hexagon, maybe you cut the hexagons out, although you can buy them pre-done on eBay now. Seriously, you can buy them on eBay. So is that then handmade? And a good friend of mine said, well, it's not made in a factory, you got all the supplies. So I showed her a picture of my fancy sewing machine, and I found a YouTube video of it doing embroidery. Obviously not mine, because mine hates me. I did manage to get one thing out of it. Anyway, you literally line it up, hit a flashing green button and go off and have a coffee. And she was like, yeah, that's kind of not. And the answer is no, as it kind of isn't. Now, it's not mass-produced factory, but it is automated. And it takes the hand skill, the skill of there is no personable skill, although if you've ever actually tried setting it up, there is a frigging skill, because it's moody. It is moodier than the moodiest teenager you ever did meet, right? So be under no illusion. Getting it, now it's not the actual setting up of it, because that's really not that hard. You put your fabric in a hoop, you have to put a couple of layers of stuff to give it a bit more strength, because all fabric these days is like this and flimsier than you could ever imagine. So, you know, you get your flimsy fabric, you have to put like 5 layers of special strengthening stuff behind it so that it can hold shape, because obviously as it jumps backwards and forwards it will tend to pucker, and oh sorry, you didn't see that, so it will tend to you know, if you backwards and forth, it will tend to draw, where's my thumb, draw in that kind of thing under tension, and so that's a problem, so you need the backing stuff. So yes, you know, you do have to do a little bit of prep work, but to be honest, most of the prep work is chopping it out and putting it on top of each other. You then use the same machine to baste it together, i.e. you run really large kind of tacking sticks around the edge to hold it all in place so it can't move, and then you put it in the hoop, you centre it all up, and well, pick your picture, hit, you know, put the right colour thread that you want in it, and hit go. Now, mine didn't like speed, mine got really grumpy at speed, but this thing's capable of something like 1500 stitches a minute, and then there's like a rabbit mode where I assume it actually then does 1500 stitches. I don't think it really does 1500 without, but it does a lot of stitches. And so as a result, you find yourself sitting there going, but now take it to knitting. So, me sitting here, 2 knitting needles, clackety clackety clack, everyone's going to agree that's handmade because I am knitting it. what if you put it in a knitting machine? Now, there are different kinds of knitting machines, before you ask. So, there is the 1980s knitting machine, where you have a bed of needles and you spend, half an hour of swearing, setting it up, and then you as a person drag a handle backwards and forwards. I need to check. I threw it there last night. I did. And knitting progresses. Then if you need to do anything such as a decrease, you get this little magic wand and you lift off these needles, you put it onto those needles so that two are on one needle, and then as you zoom across next time it will become one and you'll have your decrease, or your increase is done by kind of the same reverse of the product. You take them, move them out and put a bit of a loop on the one that you want. And is that handmade? Well, like the handmade sewing machine, literally nothing moves without your hand power. Now, even I can knit a jumper. It's an ugly jumper. Ignore the fact that it's ugly. But even I can knit a jumper in a couple of hours on a knitting machine. So if you were to purchase a hand-knitted jumper, would you feel cheated if it had only taken a couple of hours and instead of, 20 stitches a minute, you've got a thing that's doing like 20 rows a minute, because all you have to do is drag, and out of this, at that kind of speed, is forming rows of your jumper. And it can put patterns in for you because it's got a little punch card, or it's even the slightly electric one that allows you to do something else. Is that really handmade? And to me again, that's kind of grey. I feel that one's a bit more cheating, personally, because knitting is the art of snap, wrap, pull, as is crochet, to be fair. But obviously 2 sticks, not 1 stick for knitting. But the idea of just dragging your arm left and right, there is going to be, oh, I missed a stitch, oh, I didn't do that right, because, well, it's doing it all for you. Every stitch is going to be identical to every other stitch. It is kind of automated with a bit of man energy behind it. And then there's the one that I've got, and it's Big Brother that I had for a while, but the one I had, I was sold a lemon. I had all the parts to fix it, but you needed 2 people to fix it, and I live alone. And it was not going to be an easy job, and none of my friends in their right mind would have wanted to assist me, because basically I would needed to have dismantled quite a lot of it and then put it back together. So in the end, I never actually managed to knit a damn thing on it that was perfect. Sorry, had no major flaws. What happened was I bought this thing. I'd always, because realistically, you plug your computer in it with a bit of software, you go poke, 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 you design what you want as a picture, a bit like me designing this picture in the Lace software. You went into a piece of software, you designed it, but unlike this where you print it and then you've got to do all the work, you send it to the machine, and the machine, you get a little thing that says, I need these settings, and most of the settings it does itself, but there are a few manual settings, so you need to, twiddle this dial left and right, and, that kind of level of thing. But, realistically, you put in the colours, so it will has up to 4 colours. You put in the colours, you don't even change the colours on it, it does that itself. And it kind of it has a motor to send the head backwards and forwards, so you don't even have to push it. And you just press a button and watch the magic happen. And this machine had only ever done one job. It was a big job, and it was an important job. It had made a blanket for the royal family or something. The story is slightly lost on me. And although it had only done the one job, somehow it was quite damaged. And the guy promised me a training lesson on it because it was basically an industrial level machine. So he agreed to come on the Saturday, and he was supposed to be there like fairly early morning. I got a phone call about 11 o'clock, bear in mind I thought he was supposed to be there by then, saying he was having problems because he couldn't have the van that he had ordered. Dude, he was supposed to be here by now. Never mind. And so it was late in the evening by the time he got to me. He couldn't reverse his van into my driveway, which was not a hard job. So I had to reverse his van into the driveway because apparently I'm a better driver. But he was tired. So he helped me carry it up the stairs, which, believe me, the thing weighed quite a lot. This was no mean feat, but he helped me carry it up the stairs. Didn't help me put it together yet. Sodded off, went to stay overnight somewhere, because he had already planned for that. He rocked up the next morning, quite late in the morning. He spent less than half an hour. He kind of went, he helped me finish putting it together. He then sat me down and he kind of went, you select this without any explanation. You do this and then do a handful of rows and then you change this and press a button and here's a pretty picture, which came out pretty mangled because it was damaged. He went, I'll send you the bits to repair it. Yeah, that was the last he ever spoke to me. He never sent me the bits that he had promised as part of the deal, because he was fairly upfront in the original that there was damage, but that because he was a dealer, he would send me the bits. He never did. He never sent me the software. He basically lied his butt off. So I then sold the machine to a lad who looked like 12, but he was a lovely lad. And I gave him all the bits because I'd bought a crap ton of additional needles because it was really good at bending them. I'd bought replacement beds, which were the damaged bits, which were part of the reason, of course, it was trying to bend the needles, because at speed, obviously, there is additional tension, and without the strengthening sides of the beds, they bend too much, then, of course, they break, then, of course, it all goes really wrong. Anyway, he managed to get it set up, and he is happy as a pig in poo. I was disappointed, because at one point, my dream was to make animal pet blankets or baby, remembrance baby blankets, so that did I include the extra ones I did? So that people, had memories of lost children and, pets and things, and had something, whether it was for a new pet or a lost pet or something, or an elderly pet, but to have something that they could have as a memento afterwards, a bit like baby blankets really, but more animal related usually. And I had lots of plans and I had lots of designs in my head, but when the machine just turned out to be the lemon, I gave up on that dream, because while the other machine the one that I've still got, is supposed to be similar, it is really the poor cousin. Even though it wasn't cheap, it really is the poor cousin. So in double knitting, you make, this jumper's not a really good example because it's too fluffy, but in double knitting, in any knitting, you've got the V stitch, right? And that's the smooth side of the knitting. And that is done by constantly knitting, for example, on a knitting machine. The smooth side comes towards you, the purl side goes on the back. As a knitter, you knit one direction, purl the other, so that the knit stitches are on the back when you're doing the purl sides, right? Anyway, this knitting machine has a double bed, so it's got knits and purls, and it is supposed to be capable of double knitting. But it doesn't. It says it does, but when you do it, that's not really what happens. So when you do double knitting, let's say you're doing like a brick pattern, so you've got, 20 stitches, 2 stitches, 20 stitches, 2 stitches, 20 stitches, 2 stitches to make that kind of gap of the brick, right? Now, in logic, as you do it as a human, you would do 20 stitches, say in the red colour, and so you go red, white, red, white, red, white, so the white's on the back, the red's on the front. Then when you do the 2 stitches, you do white, red, red, so that the white stitches are at the front and the red stitches are at the back, and then you go back to doing red, white, red, white. So you are working in a progression solely in that one direction, right? Well, a knitting machine can only take one colour with it, so it goes and does the red, which is fine. That makes perfect sense, it really does. But it has to do 2 runs, because it has to go across and it has to come back. Well, what if in the first row, let's say for sake of the argument, the 2 rows are where the end of the brick, and now you've got like the solid white borderline. Now obviously in that scenario, are you telling me it's going to leave a long red thread all the way through the middle and return? What if, for example, you've got a couple of minor imperfections in there to make it look a little bit more snazzy? Well, it will come back and it will do those extra red threads, even though it hasn't done the white ones that are maybe underneath it. So it was not an ideal thing. And what it meant was that when you did this double knitting, it kind of didn't. Because, of course, it would do 2 rows of one and then 2 rows of the other, which meant they didn't mingle in quite the right order, and you ended up with these like stripes, and especially on the back, where the pearly side was, it really did screw that up something horrible. And there were lots of different settings, and it was like, oh, well, if you want this, then you want that. Well, that's not it either. And it just, I mean, obviously for some level it would work depending on what you were doing. If you were doing stripes, for example, that would be fine, because you could do 2 layers and 2 layers, because there was never going to be a point when it was out of sequence. But when you've 1, 2, 3, 4, that's not right. Why have we got to a point where I've got too many? 1, 2, 3. No, that's better. You are masquerading in my eyesight. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Why have I got an odd number? I've got an odd number. One of you is not right. Somehow. Yes, both of you. There we go. How did that not work? Were you lurking? Were you lurking? Did you lurk? Were you lurking? Did I accidentally do you? I did. Let's undo this. We are trying to undo. We need to try and make less mistakes this time round, after all. We are striving for perfection, even though we are not going to be finishing this at all. But that's no reason to make a crappy job of it. And especially when you know you've made a crappy job of it. Let's not, knowingly make crappy jobs of it. So. Take out, bing, undo, twist, undo, last layer, sod off, get out of the way, you were not supposed to be part of this. Right. Never mind, breathe, right, there we go. So, the semi-automatic knitting machine, well, even the manual knitting machine, feels cheating to me, just because, let's get rid of you before we know it, you're not really knitting it. The machine is. And so I struggle then when you see handmade, and watching a whole bunch of knitting machine ladies, I am not dismissing their craft, but doesn't feel handmade to me. And everyone's different. Everyone is slightly different. Everyone can draw the line where they see fit. But for me, a knitting machine, even the swipey kind, doesn't really feel handmade to me, because the machine is doing all the work and you are not. And if you can achieve in, 90 minutes an entire jumper, well, then you can do like 2 or 3 on a Saturday, and I don't know, let's say 3 or 4 on a Sunday because you were really having a really good day, and suddenly you've got 7 jumpers or cardigans to sell on eBay in a week. And now this isn't right. Why is this? I think it's just the way the bobbins are. Yeah, it's just the way the bobbins are. So if you can produce like 7 cardigans a week, that's or jumpers, that is quite a lot. And to a hand knitter, that's like blasphemy, because even the fastest knitter in the world would have a job to hand knit a jumper in that kind of timescale. And believe me, that she's a fast knitter. So it is one of those things. It's something to think about. It's a bit like the does the tree fall in the woods kind of deal. If a tree falls in the woods and you're not there to hear it, does it make a sound? And an awful lot of you says, well, of course it does. It doesn't know whether you're listening. But there is that level of almost philosophical of, when does it stop being a handmade item and a more home-produced item, or a non-factory made, non-mass-produced, non-factory kind of... It's not factory made because, you weren't chucking out, thousands an hour. But it was almost not for the lack of trying. And lace can be done by machines. They clearly do not do what I'm doing with a gazillion pins. But what they do is they have a system where the threads that are on the bobbins are held by hooks or whatever, and I won't say that the hooks dance around, because I don't think they actually necessarily change place, but something is done to make lace on a machine. A machine cannot crochet. They can make knitting machines, they can make lace making machines. They cannot make crochet machines. And that's a thought for you. Because, of course, crochet is the art of, as a generic rule, there is one loop on your hook. That is it. Everything else you have to poke and wrap and pull, and poke and wrap and pull to get some more. Then, depending on how many wraps and pokes and where you poked and how you poked and whether you poked down a lot, up a lot, round the back a lot, makes a lot of difference. A machine can't do that. It cannot fake that. Crochet is one of the few textile things that cannot be done by machine. Spinning can be done by machine. In fact, they do it far, far better than we do. Hence, thread like this is very easily possible. I mean, back in the day, thread was made by spinners, and they were capable of horrendously fine stuff. Frankly, barely 2 hairs wrapped together, in my opinion. I do spinning. I can spin. I can spin reasonably fine. In fact, I've made singles not far off the size of this thread, but then I lump them together and call it yarn. This is, I think think, she says, grabbing the spool to have a look. I don't suppose it wants to come apart or not. This is 3-ply. So there are three tiny threads wrapped together to make this microscopically thin stuff. Mine was not thin enough for that. Mine was kind of this fat, and then I joined it with friends. So I can do quite consistent yarn. I mean, my aim when I spin is to be consistent enough that when I make something from it, that people would believe I bought the yarn. That is my aim, that I am sufficiently consistent with my spinning, so it's not thick and thin and you know, so it looks like there's holes in my jumper. But that is my aim, and I can generally do that. That's fine. But obviously machines can literally do it to the nth degree, where it is absolutely, you know, kind of like 5 hairs per whatever, and at no point is it more than 5 hairs or less than 5 hairs, so it is the most even, perfect stream. And they do it really, really fast. And if you've ever seen how spinning is done on machines, it's actually quite frightening, because fluff, irrelevant of whether it's plant fluff, animal fluff or otherwise, fluff that is about to be spun is so easy to pull apart. If you think of the cotton wool ball that maybe some of you have for makeup or you've used for applying TCP to wounds or whatever, if you grabbed it and tried to pull it in half, it's not that easy to pull apart. But if you pinched like a fine bit at the end and just pulled, it comes off really easy. That is because there is no twisting and tangling, for want of a better word, of the threads that make the cotton wool ball. You can actually technically spin cotton wool balls for those who are interested, right? You'd be a little mad because it's not a very cost-effective way of doing it. But then, you know, like all things in life, who said cost effectiveness was always the answer? So let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's good. Let's get rid of you before I start using you again. So the art of spinning, you take a number of threads and you twist them. And generally you slightly over twist them so that when you join them with friends, which you do in the other direction, you're untwisting them, so you have to have the extra to allow for that. But it gives you, it's why rope works, right? If you put a lot of these threads, you know, flat, a bit like they are on my board, if each of these threads are individual and lie flat on here, and if I was to, I don't know, try and lift my body weight with it, it wouldn't work. But even if I had hundreds of them, if, let's say 200 of them, I am making it up of course, but 200 of them each as each individual, they're not going to take my weight. You can have 200 of them and I'll just snap each and every one. If you twist them together, they are greater than the sum of their original strength. And it's why rope works. And because that's all rope is it's kind of cloth stuff or plant stuff, twisted a lot to give it strength. And by having multiple layers of plies of individual twisted together bits that you then twist together, you have, instead of the strength of like one human hair, you now have the strength of 100 hairs, but instead of being 100 hairs strength, it's more like 150. So it, probably more. So it gives, hence the reason, you know, you get these people who pull along trucks with their hair and stupid stuff like, and other parts of their anatomy, but let's stick with the hair. And they can do that because their hair is kind of twisted in a knot, and it's partly the twisting in the knot and the spreading of the load that makes it work. Because as we all know, one human hair does not support a lot of weight. So it is that kind of principle, is that, and lace making, obviously, you know, each individual thread is not that strong. But at the end of it, potentially your piece of lace could be. I'm not suggesting you start, you know, making a long trail and calling it the next car tow rope, but perhaps it could. It would probably distort a bit and just turn into a bit of a mess, but in principle, perhaps it could, because obviously many threads working together, I mean, it would be better if you just twisted them, but, you know, principles again, you know, it would be far more capable than the threads alone would have been. And I find a lot of these things fascinating because obviously as humans we tend not to give a lot of thought to many of the things that we do. And so that was my thought of the day. What counts as handmade? Because obviously I like hand making stuff. Now here's a thought for you. Bear in mind I've already said that a knitting machine where you go zoom, 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 zoom is borderline to me. Why is a weaving loom not borderline to me? And the simple answer is, while you can weave going individually in and out of every thread, that is the height of inefficiency. I mean, it just is. You know, you are effectively doing kind of sewing running stitch amongst other threads to hold them together. And it's very true, that's exactly what you're doing, right? So, to me, a weaving loom is very much manual powered. You can't just fiddle with the setting, and well, some of them you can because they're electric, and that's a bit more borderline for me. But with a normal loom where you had to measure every thread, you then group them together, you had to wind them on your back beam with spacers and things to stop them eating each other and keeping the tension nice, and if you make a crap job of that, the rest of your thing will be crap, no matter how much you try, if you don't get that bit right, it's crap. You then have to thread each heddle, and the ability to count to 4 suddenly seems to be thoroughly impossible. You will ask any weaver, even threading a loom 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, which refers to a heddle on each shaft of 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. Now you can hold all 4 threads in one hand, so you get a group and you need one of each heddle, so you think you do that, you thread them all up, and then when you're done you realise you screwed up so much of it, and it's like, how? It should not be physically possible that I take 4 threads in one hand, one heddle off each of the shafts. I mean, you might, 1 3 2 4, that you can kind of understand, but when you've got 1 2 2 4, you missed one. You completely missed one, and yet you don't notice. Or you want to do 1 2 1 2 3 4, you missed 2. How did you miss 2? And it's just one of those things, is that the ability to count to 1 to 4, and not, like I said yesterday about print and data, and how after enough times, clearly your brain's just going, that can't be right. It's the same with threading your loom, and when you've got 500-600 threads to thread, 1 2 3 4 does get a little bit boring and repetitive, and your brain starts kind of idling and, coming up with its own stories and making it up and distracting you, and kind of trying not to kill itself by hanging itself from its brain stem. So you make a lot of mistakes. So then of course you have to fix the mistakes. Now you never make the mistakes at an edge, because, well, that's easy. You only ever make mistakes slap bang in the frigging middle. So there is no, it's towards this side, I'll just redo that. And there are mistakes you can more easily fix than others, But if you make it shows, oh my god, it's much like when I took the pins out yesterday and I showed you the many mistakes that I've made already in this, even though it's a trial piece and, well, thankfully not going to be one of my squares, because without many mistakes in it, this square was doomed. And believe me, that could be a thing for the real net curtain, is that I will have to declare how many mistakes is too many mistakes, potentially. I mean, obviously it depends how much it shows, but the short answer is if I know it's got way too many mistakes, so this square, this half triangle's got far too many mistakes, even if I didn't notice until I got to the end of my square, this square would be a no-go for the lace curtain, because I am not spending the rest of my life going mistake, 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 mistake. I do that anyway, but I am not counting them like per centimetre stroke inch. I need to be counting like that square's got two or three, okay. The less obvious they are, so if I knew they're there and I know where to look, but if I can see them, say, lying in bed and I can see that that one's not the same as that one, no, that's not a thing. So we will not be doing that. So mistakes per inch will be kind of a marker, or mistakes per quarter, perhaps. I might allow myself 1 mistake a quarter, maybe 2 if it's not obvious. Any more than that, square's going to be out, because it will stand out to me too much, which will mean, of course, that I will have some duff squares left over. I wonder if I can find someone to flob them on. But yoink, 1, 2, 3. So yes. But again, with the heart, with anything, if you've got mistakes in it, a lot of people can. I mean, good friend of mine, and I will kill him for this. Handmade items are supposed to have mistakes in. Now, what he meant was, you know it's not machine made and you know it's handmade when there are mistakes. But of course, what he implied was that as you as a human are incapable of ever doing it right, therefore it will be a mess. And that is what my brain heard. Those were not his words, but that's the interpretation of the statement of a handmade item is supposed to have mistakes in it. Now, the Chinese, I think it is, don't hold me to that, believe that no handmade item or no earthly made item should be perfect. For perfection is godliness. And I kind of like that idea because, well, I am not a god, and I am human, and I will err. You know, to err is human. So, to really fuck up takes a computer. But, I am human, I will make mistakes. And so, I accept there will be mistakes, but they can't be screaming ones. They can't, you know, if it's really that bad, it'll need to be a non-square. For the project. I have to do something else with it. I don't know what I would do with it, but I would have to do something else with it. And I couldn't give it to someone else because I'd be convinced they'd see all the mistakes. Now, I do know from my weaving, I made a load of stuff earlier in my weaving career, and there were mistakes in it because, well, duh. And I'm human, and I was new, and again, the repetition. So, weaving is really a lot of repetition. And, as we all know, your brain wanders. It's why people make more driving mistakes driving down a motorway, straight freeway, than they do on any other road surface, is because they're generally quite straight. You're generally doing the same speed constantly with the same cars around you constantly. And if you're on a really long journey, you know, 3 hours later, maybe you've moved counties, states, whatever, but realistically, you're surrounded by mostly the same people, or you keep seeing the same people, and, you know, it's repetition. And your brain, in part, switches off, because it goes... My dad explained this to me once. I had a major car accident in 1991, and I hurt myself real good. And not long after my accident, I was back in a car, and I couldn't really walk, but I was back in a car, and I was allowed to drive. No one had said I couldn't. It hurt, but I was allowed to drive. Emergency stops were really freaking painful. Ask me how I know. And I drove to work, to the place of work I'd crashed coming back from. And one night I left work, I turned left as I always did, drive. And the next conscious thought I had was, I'm already on the motorway. I had driven past the scene of my accident, and I'd gone down 5 or 6 miles of road, and I had zero memory of being present for this. And it raised the question in my mind. Obviously, now I need to point out, we went to court, it was proved, I was not at fault, I didn't do anything bad, blah blah blah, so it was not my fault. But I, at the time, didn't really have any memory of it. So I could have been trying to moonie my butt out the window. We've all seen movies where they do dumb stuff like that, right? Now obviously I was the driver, but that doesn't mean I wasn't half out the window trying to drive with my toe or something, right? I had no proof I wasn't doing that because I didn't remember. And obviously there had been an accident, I had been badly injured, the other driver had been badly injured, although not as bad. So 2 people were hospitalised, 2 cars completely written off and turned into little pat cakes. I have pictures, by the way. In fact, let me share you a picture to give you an idea, because, well, I'm a caring, sharing, loving person. Let me find my pictures. Picture. I need to go in there. I need to go to... Oh, I hate Facebook. Photos, see all photos, albums, because I rather sensibly put it up as my car. So, they're not very big pictures, I need to point that out, mainly because they were scanned pictures and I scanned them. So, let me just work this out. On the window, to capture, I need that one. There you go. No, that's not going to work. Right, so, anyway. This was the front of my car. And this was the beautiful car that I owned. I loved this car. What you can't tell from this car is, well, what the hell it is, other than it was blue. This is a slightly better picture of the car, because, well, there's the back end of it. They did cut the roof off and the door. By the way, there's a door here. That's 2 doors hanging off, not just one. It was not a 3-door car. It was a 5-door car. It had 2 down the side and a boot, right? Here is the other side. You can see it had 2 doors there. And here was the more whole side of my car. And here was my sad picture. By the way, the thing underneath that looks a bit like a beer can, that's the fan. But this was my poor car. He was called Murdoch. But Murdoch was a very beautiful car, and I loved him dearly. So, having rearranged myself, the other car was a Vauxhall Cavalier. That was originally a Ford Cortina, which is a Taurus in America for some reason. Now, obviously, they're old cars because, well, he was made in like 1970 something, but this was in 1991, remember, so it wasn't quite as bad. We met corner to corner on a wet road, as is apparent from the photo, on a patch of diesel. Now, I clearly shortened my car quite a bit. And stop spamming emotes warning. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're allowed to spam emotes, Dorian, it's fine. I'm glad this is much better. I wish people had told me that it was sounding pants. Apparently, it was partly down to how I was capturing sound, and there is allegedly OBS are blaming Windows. You know how it is. People never take responsibility for things, so they were blaming the Windows for it, and apparently it'll be fixed in some patch. But I am really pleased that it is better now, because it would crap out round about now. It would start going a bit wonky, but of course I can't tell it's wonky because I can't hear it, because I'm the one generating it. So and even if I listen to what it's outputting, because it feeds back, say, what's coming out my mic, it doesn't feed back what it's sending, if you know what I mean. It almost sends the before sound rather than the after sound. So basically it wasn't telling me there was anything wrong, and I had no idea, and none of you buggers told me. So it was a bit bad. But thanks for coming, Dorian. I'm really happy somebody's here. And you've just seen my car pictures. This is what we British do when we hit 60 mile an hour each way. So I spent a lot of time in hospital. That was not fun. But I loved my car. I truly did. But yeah, never mind. I've been on a bit of a... I'm never going to ban you, Dorian, and I'd immediately unban you if it did. Come on, I know you know better than that. Yeah. No, I wouldn't ban people. I don't want to ban anyone. The only people I've banned have been the bots doing the, hey, get more viewers, and, you know, kind of idiots. So I'm not banning anybody. Not unless you're a real jerk. Yeah, I'm not that mean. Well, I am, but not as a whole. So... thinking about this. Yeah, you were the discarded pet, so... Right. So yes, in terms of imperfections, I definitely will have to have a quality control check. Oh, we all have the power to ban you, but I wouldn't be that mean. Ox could ban you, of course he could. Although, aren't you a moderator? But I wouldn't ban you. I mean, you'd have to be pretty outrageously rude, and, well, for people to notice, frankly. I wouldn't... I'm not like that. I'm not like that. I wouldn't ban you. I mean... I might ask you to tone it down a bit if you were getting a bit overexcited and maybe out of tone, but yeah, I'm British. I talk about farts and I swear. I mean, given my current shenanigans, which I'm still not sure whether I'm allowed to talk about or not, but let's just say I'm in a really bad mood. And I spoke to someone who considers me really helpful and nice and pleasant. Yeah. I don't know what drugs they take, but never mind. They, you know, when I told them our news, fish and chips, yeah. When I told them the news of what was going on, they were really mad, and they let me rant for about 2 hours in full bitter, twisted mode. And then I said to them afterwards, by the way, this is me happy. You wait till I'm mad and angry. And they kind of went, really? And I went, oh yeah. I'm currently happy, but a bit ranty. You wait till I'm mad. Just run. Seriously, run. I am like, you know, the hurricane that just hit Florida when I go, because I will take everything with me. I don't care who you are, what you are, why you are. I will take you with me, and I will flatten you. So, yeah. As someone found out, I don't lose my temper that often, I will point out. I invented a new word, which I will not repeat on stream, because, frankly, I shouldn't have invented it, but it amused my neighbours, because I did scream it rather loudly down the phone. It was not my proudest moment, although I do find it kind of funny. My co-worker had done a really dumb thing. How do the sticks work? Right. Let me zoom. Down a little bit, like this. Like that. So, if I take these 4, you can vaguely see that they're crossed over. So let me uncross them briefly. Right. Lace making is made of 2 moves. Left one over right one, put it down. This is called cross. Right one, this one here, over left one, put it down, is known as twist. And I can do it again because there's 4 of them. And I am not doing the middle one. You do a cross again, and now you have done a cloth stitch, which gives you basically uppity over and undery over. And so it makes the kind of normal fabric look that you get in cloths such as the blue cloths on my thing. Gives you, that's why it's called cloth stitch. Other stitches are made of multiples of twists and crosses and pinholes and rappity things. But realistically, that's it. You either cross or twist. You generally work in pairs. There are occasions where you may only have one. This is called a gimp thread, and it's usually big and fat and chunky. And one thought at one point was maybe to have a gimp thread that ran round the edge of these squares or something instead of maybe the cloth stitch. All you do is you cross them around a lot, and everywhere there's a dot on the pattern, you stick a pin. And the reason there are zigzag lines here is that these dots, you do what's called, in quotes, ground stitch. And for the zigzags, you do the cloth stitch to make the more solidy bit. And the reason these have squares is you do slightly other combinations. So you do a bit of a cloth stitch to join these 2 pins to come into these 2 pins. Now I know it sounds a bit irate, but basically you want to make it a square. So you make the point of the square there, make the point of the square there. You then do some shenanigans by going top, usually top, left, right, bottom. You can do top, right, left, bottom, it doesn't really matter. And then you do some more shenanigans to make the bottom left point and some more shenanigans to make the bottom right point. Ta-da! You've now made a square with like a little circle in the middle. So that's what the little square represents. There are many, 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 many stitches, but it all involves cross or twist. So in theory, it's really, really easy. It's amazing how much you can screw up what should be quite easy, because most stitches only consist of 3 or 4 commands, cloth stitch, so to interweave the 2 pairs and basically transpose their positions. It does look a bit like a circuit board. You have to do 3 moves. Well, technically you could argue it's 4. If I do it with one hand, it's 4. So you do cross in the middle, twist on the left, twist on the right, cross in the middle. So you do 4. Or you can cheat, which I do frequently, because, well, hello, I'm a geek and I cheat. It's called efficiency. What you can do is, if for example I go back and undo this one again, right, I've now got, let me zoom out, it'll make a bit more sense. So I've got, this is my working pair, this is the pair that will move all the way to the side. These 2 technically don't move, but I've got to uppity under. So for example, this one starts off going up and over the first one. So I do that. Now, both these bobbins would normally be twisted by moving those over and then the last cross. But if I don't do the last cross, I start the next pair, which would normally be this one over that. So I lift that one over and then do the twists, and that was less moves. And as long as you keep going And that is the important factor. As long as you keep going, you don't tend to fucking up quite so much. And so, and of course, by not moving bobbins around so much, because you only ever go under and over, and you don't kind of, you deal with it in the most efficient manner. Oh, there's a pin there. Let me remove that because I just stabbed myself in the elbow with it. It does mean that you can build up a bit of speed, but sadly, cloth stitch is kind of boring, and we don't do a lot of that. Yesterday, I spoke to a nice man. Well, I wrote to a nice man via email about a pillow that he has mentioned on his website that would mean I could make my whole neck curtain in one go, which would scrap the whole square idea, by the way. So that could be a thing. Or I would do another one and maybe have it in the downstairs toilet or something. Because making it all in one go would be quite nice, and obviously the downstairs toilet one is more visible, and so if I made it in one go, there wouldn't be any joins, there wouldn't be any fudging, and you can make it quite quickly if you like spiders. And as we all know, Liz doesn't like spiders. So spiders, Dorian, are where instead of, for sake of the argument, if you think of, let's pick these squares because they stand up more on camera. If these were each individual pins, let's take a 4x4, you'd take four pairs of bobbins, well there'd be two here, and then you'd have pairs of bobbins there, and then pairs of bobbins there, and you twist them all a bit, do some shenanigans in the middle, and then fill out the bottom bits, right? And well, it kind of has a round, overly body in the middle with legs, hence it's called a spider. Now, I don't hate them because they're called spiders. I hate them because I don't like overly look like the way they look. But there are a billion ways to make a spider. Some work better than others. Some look even uglier than others. But there's ones called cathedral window. And as it might suggest, instead of having like an oval bit with, 8 legs, for example, sticking out of it, you have your legs coming in from the side, but you have like an archway that kind of almost makes a pear drop shape because it comes to a point at the bottom, but it's called a cathedral window. And they're quite nice, as spiders go. And they don't take any longer than the other spiders. And so spiders work up quite quickly because, for example, each of these dots is cross, twist, cross, pin, cross, twist, cross. So there's a number of moves. The spiders, you do like some cross, twist, cross down the sides, cross, twist, cross down the sides, twisty, 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 shenanigans, cross, twist, cross, cross, twist, cross, cross, twist, cross, because so you've covered a greater area with a big hole in the middle because you didn't work that bit, so therefore it takes less time. And you can do, allegedly, spiders in less than a minute. Oh, I'm surprised it takes that long. So it probably does. I have not sat and timed it because, well, that's not a thing. I'm not timing how many, the exact timing of this stitch is 2.1 milliseconds. It doesn't work like that. I'm a geek, but I'm not that sad. I'm not doing a speed run but with the spiders, because they take up a bit like on here I've got the different blocks to make a bit of a pattern. Because they take up bigger space, I can have spiders and like cloth stitch diamonds and some other things. So I could make a bit of variegation, probably mainly cloth stitch bits, with just to give it a bit of a, kind of random look to it. But you could do that. In fact, let me demonstrate. Bear with me, dear caller. So, somewhere in all of this, let's fire this up. Once it's confirmed who I am and doesn't display the serial number, because whoever wrote this was an idiot. The moment you start this thing, it blasts your serial number and you pay a lot of money for it. So I'm not going to do that. Let me find... There it is. Dunk. Right, so if I now look at this window, I can do load of motif, and I'll go to 4 pins. Yes, this will do. Let's pick the 4-pin spider, right? In fact, can we zoom in while we're doing this? I don't suppose we can. No, this software doesn't allow that because it's a bit pants. Let's try that again. Spider. Yeah, no. Where's the normal spider? Where's the actual normal spider? Where are you, spider? Is there really no normal spider? How can there be no normal spider? Well, you'll understand. That's close enough. We'll use that one. Right. So, if all of your work was made of spiders, you'd line them up like this. And it does give an interesting effect, by the way. As you can soon see, the spiders join together and form a really weird kind of pattern. Because they just do. Right, and so I'm going to go a couple more down this way. Just because I can. So I'm going to have like 2 layers of spiders on the outside. So I need a couple more down here. And let's do... I'm going to miss a hole, so I need to chunk, 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 chunk. So I could make my net curtain like this, without spiders. Oh, I missed one. Where's my spider? Missed one. Chunk. Right. And then, in the middle, have a solidy bit. Right? So you'd have a big kind of open, chunky bit, and have a solider bit in the middle. Or you could do a collection of them to make it at least worthwhile, right? Again, you would probably experiment to find out. But there aren't just 4-pin spiders. There are considerably more possible. These are all technically spiders, so crossed eyes and haloed spider and double haloed spider, they're all fine enough, funnily enough. See again, it's not actual boring traditional, but let's go with the haloed spider as the nearest. So I could make them out of 8 pins and do kind of, you know. And, well, obviously, because you effectively skip all of the ones that aren't on the outside edge, they grow really fast. I just don't like these spiders. I don't like how they turn out so much. But principle, you could make it out of those spiders. So there are a lot of spidery options. Do I have the cathedral window spider? Let's go back. I'm pretty sure I didn't hear. No. No. As you can tell, there's a lot of spiders. Oh, there's a normal spider. There's a more normal spider, so you could, you know, join these together. But there's still no cathedral spider there. I'm not sure anyone. I probably have to make one myself. That's close enough. It's not exactly right, but it's close. So what you get with this one, let me get rid of these because they'll be distracting. Oh, and it's selected that as well. This is why this product really has an issue, is that you can, well, as you can tell, I'm going around it and it's drawing it like a weird thing. So if you look at this, the legs come in and they make like the top half of the normal spider, but the bottom doesn't. It kind of comes to a point. Now in the true cathedral one, there isn't this extra pin at the bottom where you do some shenanigans, but it gives you the idea. It makes this kind of pointy with a hole at the bottom kind of thing, and that to me is the potential of the new should the pillow arise and be what I expect it to be, making something like that becomes a lot more easy because it's not flat, so you can chuck the bobbins over the back and you get to use really big chunky bobbins, and I'd get to use my favourite bobbins and I'd be happy. But you can also use thicker thread. Well, you can use thicker thread for anything really, but it is more common to use thicker thread with A, that style pillow, and B, that kind of thing. Because lots of people right now, the most in thing for lace makers to be doing, it seems, is making spider scarves. So they get like crochet thread. She hasn't got any because it's over there, that's really annoying. But crochet thread's like, I don't know, 5 times the thickness of this stuff. And you make it out of that, so there aren't so many bobbins per inch. Hallelujah, right? And you make crap tons of these spiders, and you make a scarf out of it. Well, what is a net curtain if it's not a fat, short scarf? Because really, that's all it really is it's wider and not as long. That'll be my work colleague, because he's good at that. Bing. Didn't you know that? Hang on. Let me reply to that. Apparently, he wasn't listening. Anyway, he'll ping back and reply and go, "You didn't tell me." Actually, I did, darling. So, the idea of doing the spiders, much as I don't like spiders, could appeal. I could see me trying it as a net curtain in really thick yarn because it would work up really fast, and I'd be able to use my favourite bobbins and everything. So, sticking a couple of diamonds in to put a bit of variegation so it's not just a wall of spiders, but having a bit of variation and stuff, sounds like a plan. Especially as you can potentially do a bit of colour in the diamond section. Because you can, if you make a diamond shape, so if you picture on here, if this was all going to be filled in with cloth stitch, I can add a pair here at the top that becomes the working pair and goes backwards and forwards, and is, say, a strong colour or a metallic thread, which is what I did in my bookmarks, so they have the metallic thread, and it does look quite nice. I mean, it doesn't really show up very well on camera, but it looks quite nice in person. The metallic thread is wafer thin, makes even this stuff look fat. But if you had a matching sized thread, it becomes yellow, blue, green, whatever colour it is, and it makes that square a colour. So you could do like little coloured squares down the white net curtain as a bit of interest, which I think would look quite nice. The fly holes would be a thing, but if it's in my downstairs toilet, that's not a problem because you don't open the window in there, so that's fine. Well, somewhat fat that there's a fan in the wall for that. The window is purely for daylight, so a bit of and it's got bathroom glass on it, so you can't see through it anyway. So all it is light, and so having a net curtain on it is not a requirement, but it would be pretty. My downstairs bathroom, I'm making it sound really interesting. It's a toilet and a sink. But it would make it a little bit more, and it would be visible to people, and so if it's done in one piece, instantly there aren't any crappy joins and all that. And funnily enough, when making spiders, because they're bigger, you can still screw them up, as I proved, but as a whole, they are quite a routine to get into. There's a bit of variation in the routine, so it's not just literally always doing the same thing. There is variation, even though you are making, 50, 100 billion spiders. But it is a thought, and it is a thought that I have given, and one that I thought of. So that will depend as and when. I'm waiting to get a quote on the postage, because the actual pillow itself is frankly next to nothing. He's all but given it away, and it's huge. So I'm not going to fight him if he's literally giving it away for 20 quid. I mean, Christ, I can't even buy a pizza for that. Okay, you can, but only just. Domino's Pizza, who is one of the main brands of pizzas over here, is usually £23-24, so it's cheaper than a 12-inch pizza. I mean, it would be frankly stupid not to. I mean, this pillow, this one with the movable middle piece, I think was nearly £40. So one that's 27.5 inches wide, and what was it? Something I can't remember. I can't remember how big it was. I did ask Google. Alexa, what's the circumference of a circle if the diameter is 11 inches?
From answers.com, the circumference of a circle with a diameter of 11 inches is 34.56 inches.
So it's got a diameter of 34 inches. Well, I only need 38 to go all the way down my window. So pretty much I could make it without it all barely overlapping on my cushion. So it really would be spot on ideal for making window patterns, really. Yeah, it would be ideal. So it is a thing, and so I'm kind of enthused by that, because the other day I saw on Facebook, and it was some people up in Liverpool, and one woman there had this monster bolster cushion, probably one of these, to be honest, in hindsight, and she had an almighty crap load of bobbins on it. Not as bad as they could have been, but it was a lot. And I wanted to give you something. I wanted to share something actually. With I was mooching on the internet earlier today. I mooch on the internet quite a lot because, well, what else do you do on the internet? You mooch, right? Where is it? There it is. I open that with paint. There we go. I want to share with you my anxiety. I've mentioned that I find many bobbins quite anxious because they tangle and all the rest of it. So this is a picture of a woman doing some work. Now, she's only actively working on a handful at the bottom, which you can see. And it is part of a video off YouTube, so you can go and find it if you really, really want. But if I show you this, look at the pile of bobbins near the camera. And bear in mind, there's basically an identical amount the other side. Just look at them. And what you can't see is slightly off the bottom of that screen were some escaped ones. There were ones not in the little kind of holdery things that she's got. And I've got some of those holdery things. Bobbins don't like to stay in them so much, but so you have to be very careful with them because, well, they just slide out because the elastics on them's not that tight. And even if it was tight, it's still not that good at clamping it down because, well, it's about 6 inches long and frankly they can just run away. But just look at it. Now, to be fair, she is making a piece that's about 8 inches wide and she's making a pretty picture. Which was why I was watching it because, you know, I was quite interested in how she did that because obviously a net curtain with a picture in it could look quite pretty. Not really up for that yet because A, I can't draw, but also I was just generally casually interested in what she was doing. And it was the bobbins. I mean, I have seen worse. I've seen these Midland spangled things and piles, and I mean piles. Almost the pile of books level piles of bobbins. And, I mean, you can see from there, she's got quite a lot of pins as well. And even watching her do this, she suffers from the same as I do, which that because you do small amount of faff, and it is quite a small amount of faff, small amount of faff, pin, small amount of faff, small amount of faff, pin, small amount of faff, she is not able to get up a decent head of speed because you're having to stop and stick a frigging pin in. And it really does slow it all down. But of course we need the pins to hold it still so that we can put a bit of tension on it so that there's no saggy bits and that it will all turn out the way it's supposed to. But it is the putting of the pins that really do hamper the whole of this. It really does. And And so it is frustrating, because you want to kind of get on with it. You want to, unlike knitting where, if you're doing knitting and you've got, hang on, let me do this without screwing it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you do knitting, you can build up a head of steam because, for example, let's say you do a pattern, but the return row's all the same. Well, you get up a head of steam because you don't have to stop and read the pattern and go, well, I've done 5 of those. I now need to do, I'm there, so I need another 6, and then we'll have to do this, and I'll have to come back because I'm not going to remember the little patterny bit. And it's always the differences that slow you down, not the repetition. So it is, if this was pure cloth stitch, so if I did a square of pure cloth stitch, which I could do, I could get up a lot of steam. I really could, because my cheaty method for doing cloth stitch really is quite efficient. And so you do, and other people do it. I did work it out for myself, and then I found a video of someone else doing the same. They didn't mention, she's doing a bit different. They was just a picture of this wizened old wise woman going chunk 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 like I do, and I went, that's what I do. I'm not insane. It's not a cheat. Someone else does it. So I am one of these people. I can't do something without thinking, surely there's a better way of doing this. And this is what I do at work. I think of, surely there's a better way of doing this. And automation is what I do best. Writing little bits to string other bits together to make it so much easier so that you press a button and it goes and does all the hard work. Hence I wrote the patching system. And because all it really does is go, for any list of servers, log into N, run patch me. Well, it doesn't run patch me, it runs the command that does all the patching. And then once it gets to the end of that and it's done them all, it waits for them all to finish because it's a good program. It triggers them all in parallel and then waits for them all to finish. If one doesn't finish, well, you're a bit screwed actually. But it's they are vaguely tested before we start. And then it goes back and it goes, right, now you all have to reboot. So it goes for any and all the servers I just patched, reboot, and your patching is done. It used to take our hosting company, I think I worked out as something like 3.5 days a month to patch our servers, and we had less than 4 minutes. That's how long mine takes. The longest it has ever taken, and that was when Red Art upgraded from 10 to 11 or whatever, 11 minutes. So and you kind of and the guy who does the patching, because funnily enough, I don't actually do the patching. I wrote the thing, but I actually don't do the patching because originally we paid for a piece of software that was very expensive, and we still do pay for the piece of software that was supposed to patch it all. But it doesn't. It never did. It made a real dog's dinner of it. Didn't patch them all. And 6 hours later, it would have done I added one update. Darling, you had 132 to do, and you've done one on one of the 100 and something servers that you had. In 6 hours, what were you doing? Sending it by semaphore? Flags? I could have typed the noughts and ones quicker. What were you doing? And 90% of the time, the server end would say, waiting. The client end would say, waiting. And no one knew what they were waiting on. So, hence my system just literally goes, right, patching starting. For running servers, how many patches do you think you've got? And it goes, and it runs commands and goes, well, I asked you how many patches were available, and I worked out the ones that I will use. I need 23, please. And it goes, right, before starting, this, each server needed this number of patches. Then it goes, doing it. And actually the method is called do it, because I'm original. And it goes off and does it, and does for running servers, patch. Then it does the reboot, and then it tells you to wait a couple of minutes and run check. And if check doesn't come back saying 0, it fucked up. And it literally That's it. It's patched all of your servers, and yeah, and well, he gets on with it. Funnily enough, and you know, it's like a miracle, and you know, I was highly praised for my innovation of patch system, and it's kind of like, well, you should have asked me in the first place. You spent more than my salary on the patching system, and it doesn't even patch it. Plus, of course, it didn't support. We use a couple of versions of Linux, and it doesn't support anything other than one of them. It doesn't seem to support multiple versions, and currently we've got 3 at play, and so it was mega crap. Whereas mine, okay, I have to add a new section potentially for new versions, but so far the only real difference has been between 7 and 8 and 9, so there's only 2 chunks and it does all the 7s and all the 8s, and that's only because it's got to do a bit of funkiness before the 8 and 9 start, and because it's got to run a command, because basically our antivirus will eat something if you don't turn it off before you start patching, i.e. the kernels will not apply. And so I turn off the antivirus for what turns out to be like seconds, and then it instantly reboots and puts it back on. So it is a thing of beauty, because there were no pre-commands, no post-commands in the paid-for patching system, whereas of course I've got pre- and post-commands. So, and it didn't take me long to write. I have improved it over the time. I've done a bit more of this and a few extra changes and stuff, but it didn't take me very long. Well, it's because it's really not that hard. And some evil woman in the company, she contacted me about it, because I don't quite remember why she was contacting me about it, but she said, I want to understand your batch file. My batch file, darling, replaces a £35,000 patching system. Can we give it a little more credit than a batch file? Well, technically it is a batch file, but that's not the point. It is slightly more intelligent than start some crap, yes, no. It keeps logs and it does everything, but you know, I'm sorry, don't refer to my wonderfully time-saving, highly effective and efficient system as batch file. That's just insulting. It'd be like going to the Sistine Chapel and going, "Can I look at your sketch?" It's don't you do that to me, you cow. So yes, right. Hurrah! We have finished with the cloth stitch for the moment. I shall move them out the way, because we won't be needing you. Now, I'm going to take you, because you're not really in use by anything else, and cover you. And why am I making yet another layer? That's what, the third one of those? Because all of these... Oh, you're still looking at the picture. Yeah, could have said you were still looking at the picture, people. Seriously, paying attention. Ha! So we finished the cloth stitch. I need to move these out the way, because we're starting back at the top of this triangle with the 3 bobbins or whatever it is at the top. And I want this out the way as much as possible, because I don't need them yet. And they're not really fitting, but that's fine. We shall... Oh, you're really short. Lengthen you a bit. Let's bring these down. So, I need you. Seriously, did I screw up already? How did I do that? Let's have a look. This is where being able to stick your head up close and personal really counts, because these two look like they're coming from the second pin. Let me zoom in. I zoom in quite a lot. Right. Where's my pokey? No, that's not the pokey. Is that the pokey? Yes, that's the pokey. Right. If you look where these threads are coming from, they look like they're coming from the pin right next to the tip. They actually come out of this pin, because if I move them, they are the post first pin pair, which is why, as I've said many times, brain farts, because you look at it and your brain's going, that's wrong, you've screwed up, and you don't want to undo it all to find out actually you did it right. So right, these need a cross on them because that's how this works. And now we're in the cross twist pin category, because we're making the ground stitch. And this is not hard, but it is where you start making mistakes because it's lots of pins, lots of repetition. Now, once again, we could raid some of these further back pins because we don't need so many further back pins. Why did I think of the Holler Back Boy song? Ain't no holler back boy. So, yeah. Anyway, I can sing, but I can't sing quietly, because I was a chorister and stuff, and so I'm designed to project my voice and be really loud. And I'm not a chorister because, well, I'm not. And my voice broke like a bloke in the middle of a concert while I was singing. So there was me, singity sing, happy, grunty, squeaky, squeaky, grunty, squeaky, squeaky. The look of horror. Oh, the shame. I was like a small nuclear weapon. The heat from my face could have heated the planet for a week. Oh, the shame. Fortunately, and I say fortunately, it was while I was at school. So I was doing a school concert and only a handful of students saw me, and most of them were not in my year, so didn't really know me. And I could kind of not, if you know what I mean. And so I I got away with it because I really friggin' didn't. But more to the problem, I was only there to be singing in a bit of group stuff, so I could kind of mouth along and pretend that it was me, alright? And not actually sing for that. That was fine. I was one of the 3 little maids from school, and moreover, one of the maids kind of bottled out and said, I can't sing it on my own in front of people. You've been practicing this for months, seriously? So I had to sing, where possible, her bit with her, so she was not the only person singing at any one time. So I had to kind of mix my bit and her bit. And on the way to the concert, my dad had given me a lift. We were listening to the Beach Boys, because that was the kind of crap my dad listened to. He listened to Status Quo, Orbson, and the Pretenders, and kind of stuff that I still love today. And Sleep John B. And I was singing along in the car, because, well, I know all the words to his tapes. I knew all of his tapes off by heart. We had some Blondie in there as well. But, I knew all of his tapes off by heart, and I was singing along. And then, when we got to the concert, obviously we're all in kind of like, let's call it the green room, for want of a better word, the holding pen for those not currently out on stage. And some kids in the guitar class, didn't know we had a guitar group, but they were in the guitar class, were playing Sleep John B. and making a bit of a balls up of it. So I started singing along to kind of give them the tempo. And they were kind of like, what do you mean there are words? It's a song, dude. I then briefly had an argument with one of the kids, because AIDS was quite a big hot topic back then, about how you don't die of AIDS, you die of a disease or ailment that you catch because you have AIDS. Yeah, then it turned out one of the kids' brothers or something, or cousin or something, had died, and they were told it was AIDS. Well, of course it's not AIDS. Anyway, so there was a bit of an argument, but the teacher came along, having heard me singing along. Was that you singing? Well, yeah. Right, when they go out, you're going out singing. What? What? I didn't sign up for this. This was not the deal. No one, I never agreed to that, as I was kind of shoved out on stage, and it was kind of like, yeah. Guess when my voice broke? Yeah. Oh, it was terrible. I was so bad. Mind you, slightly better, it to some extent, than the time when we were doing the snowman, because not that I was particularly into theatrics and stuff at school, but the girl I was going to go home with for tea, which was about the only time I ever did go home with someone for tea when I was at school, wanted to audition for Of Mice and Men. No, Billy Liar. It was Billy Liar. And I was kind of like, really? Okay. And I was told by the teacher when we rocked up, well, you can't just sit there, you have to audition. Oh, I don't want to bring an audition, I don't want to be in it. Well, then you can't stay. Well, I haven't got any choice, I've got to wait for her. Fine, I'll audition. So, when it came to doing the Barbara part, we were given a line and I went, "Oh, Billy, you're so lovely." Yeah, I got the part, didn't I? And regrets of lifetime. So I instantly was Barbara in Billy Liar. And I really didn't try very hard, I will confess, to learn my lines, because I didn't have to. The leading man who was playing Billy was a kid called Colin. Now, I'm not going to say Colin was a bad guy, because he wasn't, but I was not a popular kid, no one overly liked me. And I was generally picked on, so... "Oh, Billy, I love you." You know, when you look at Colin who's looking at you on stage and go, "Jesus Christ, struggling," say the opposite. Oh, Billy, you're so lovely. It worked every time. And... But when we did the snowman, we were doing it for a local school for challenged children. And so we did that. That was fine. But when we came to do it for the school, because they wanted to show off how well we'd done, the kid who had done We're Walking Floating in the Air, the Snowman song, refused to do it in front of people who knew him. And because I was in the choir, they kind of went, "Oh, Liz, you can do it." "What?" "Well, you can do it." "I don't want to do it either." "Oh, well, you have to do it." "Well, why? He doesn't want to do it and he's not doing it." "Well, you have to, otherwise no one will be doing it." "Yeah, but I don't want to do it." Anyway, during one of the rehearsals, we're all sitting there, and generally there were a load of people sitting at the front of the stage with their legs dangling off, and then I was in the middle row kind of kneeling up, so not sitting cross-legged kind of thing, or kneeling down as in sitting on your feet, but kind of 90 degrees chopping yourself off at the knee. And we were doing a rehearsal, and bit TMI, but it was that time of the month, and I was yet little, and well, blood and lack of and blood pressure tends to go a bit wonky during these times. And I'd been kneeling up, and we'd been practicing, and they'd been stopping and starting, and it wasn't just getting on with it. So we'd been kneeling for quite a while. "We'll take a break," says Teach. "Thank fuck for that," says everybody. So, I go to get up. Oh, the blood rushes back to my feet, doesn't it? Well, where's that mean? Well, it's not in my head. So I fell over, and I pushed my friend Fiona off the front of the stage, much to her disgust. And because I kind of sparked out on the floor and kind of pancaked, as I was getting up, obviously my legs went backwards and my head went forward. So I push her off the front, and I kick the guy behind me in the broken leg. You can't make this stuff up. You really can't. And then, of course, I had to sing. yeah, let's not. Can we not? You know. I do appreciate that when you're up on stage, you're not yourself. You're pretending to be someone else. And to an extent, I can do that. I mean, as a chorister, I sang solos at many weddings. In fact, I remember one Christmas time, I'm sure it was Christmas, very sure it was Christmas, sure it was around Christmas, and there was some evening mass crap, and we'd been made to sing at it, which was unusual because there weren't usually too many in the evening, and it wasn't midnight mass, it was because we were at school the next morning, but it was some evening crap, and I'd been literally up front and centre, right in front of the first row of pews, kind of almost toe to toe with my RE teacher, right? Religious education, in case people were wondering. And 9 o'clock the next morning, I've got RE, and I hadn't done my homework. Why haven't you done your homework? And I look at him and it's like, really? And he went, because he'd said it like the day before, and it was like, really? What do you mean? You're asking me why I haven't done it? You know you were at church last night, sir. And you can see, how did you know that? I was standing like 10 inches in front of you singing the solo. Oh, was that you? Seriously, I stood there like a prat in my cotter and ruff and me and all the rest of it, and you didn't notice? Okay, thanks for that. I feel really important now. But yeah. So I can do public humiliation, for want of a better word, but I have to be in the right mood for it. And hence this streaming is difficult for me, because I can do public humiliation, but the problem is I can't see you. Now, that should be a blessing, but it's not, because it means I can't gauge how badly you think it's doing. And so, like when finding out that the stream has been clunky and crappy and none of you told me, I then feel really bad, because here's me trying, because I am trying. I'm trying not to have too much radio silence, even though I don't necessarily get, it's not like there's 1,000 of you in there chattering away and I can butt in on conversations and watch conversations and go with the flow and see things that I've said sparking conversations. I am a bit like a radio DJ, kind of mostly talking to myself. That, and of course I am watching what I'm doing, not watching the chat quite as closely as perhaps, say, other people do. But then I've kind of got an excuse because I don't want to mess it up. But it is very much like being a radio DJ in that you can't see your audience. You don't know whether you're talking to one person or a million. Now, according to my view count, there's one of you. But it is slightly also disappointing that there's one of you, because I'm going through all this effort. I feel really embarrassed. It's really out of my comfort zone. But I do want to document this, and so what I really probably would have done normally would be, I know, just take some photos of, here's the end of day one. That's what I've traditionally done with most of my work. Here's day one. Here's, completed object number 2, whereas I'm actually trying to document a lot of the thought that I've put into what we're going to try and do, how we're going to achieve it, and all those kind of aspects that are all good part of this process, but that maybe you don't really get to see, even as lace makers. They will be presented with a pattern and it will say, here's how, you might be able to do a video on here's how to do ground stitch, here's how to do the cloth stitch, here's how to do the rose ground, enjoy, or even here's how to turn the corners, right? But it's really easy, you turn the corner. But that principle to me is the having the document, so some of the ideas, some of the design decisions and criteria I'm either inflicting on myself or know that I can't achieve what I want to do, so am compelled to achieve slightly differently, and that looks wrong. It's because it is wrong. How is that wrong? How is that wrong? I was counting pairs, and I made sure that we had all the right number of pairs, and it all made sense. Doesn't now, because the pair that I added in on the first pin last time were the pair for this row. We seem to be missing the pair that should go on the row above. I don't really want to do all that cross stitch bit. Let's look at this thing. So, that should go in there. That should go in there. That goes. You do that on your head. Problem is without some pins, it's hard for me to see that because they lie flat. One of them's up me now. There we go. So you go naturally into this pin. You go naturally into, you two go into this pin. You go into this pin. I will zoom in again and you'll see what I mean. If I zoom in really carefully, you will see that the angle of this thread in here, this pair here, I've caught on the bitchy bobbins, sort of. This angle here is wrong. If you look at the one above it, it's much more diagonal. This one should be coming to the pin we're about to do. There is a missing pair. So I want to see if I can work out how, by adding pins and pairs to separate them out, so that you go to this pin and you would go to this pin. To see if I can work out how I screwed it up, because, well, clearly I did. I mean, I know how I screwed it up, but it seems to add up, so that also is puzzling and confusing. So you go into that one, and you two are the work pair, and you, that would be, so you're fine. I am absolutely and categorically, it feels, missing some. Yeah, I really don't understand how I'm missing some. How can I be missing some? Seriously, this does not, this defies kind of physics again. So you go in there and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be right, because you came in from the left. No, it's not right. Or is it? No, I think I've got one too many. But at the same time, that doesn't make sense quite either. Because normally this pair would be discarded in the next row. Remember I said about discarding before or after? Even though I could have sworn I discarded after on every single row, clearly I missed one early on. But then that would make it feel like if you discarded these two already, you'd have done 2 and picked up a 3rd. So then it would feel really thin. So you have to discard afterwards, and it works fine for all of the other rows, but somehow, the answer is there should not be 4, there should be 3. And I should have discarded so that there were 3. Correct, brain. So, how do we fix this without going insane? Because I don't really want to undo all of that. What time is it? 10:30. Pants. We know we're not using this square. I hereby realise that I am about to... Okay, scared. But I'm going to let it take the pairs from the wrong pin to make up for my faux pas, because we're not using this square, and it will make it look a bit funny at that point. But I am not going back that far. If this was the real square and I discovered it now, I would go back, because, well, once seen and known about, and it is still... I mean, if I had to go back to here because I spotted this just now, that's not going to happen. But this is undoing this back a little bit and this one row. It is feasible to undo. And I did do it on the actual square that is my kind of holding square. So, for example, this square, I did undo bits. I undid some big bits, frankly. I seem to remember I got to... I think I got to one of the edges and realised I had the wrong number of bobbins and had to go 3/4 of the way back up, which involved me undoing some other chunks, because as you know, I do kind of chunks, and I had to do a couple of other chunks to go back far enough to fix it. So in a real square, we will have to fix if we find we get to a point and realise we have got the wrong number of bobbins. But today, no. Today, it is a minor imperfection. It will look a bit crap, like the wrong angled threads. It will mean it will look a bit kind of weird, but we know we're not using this. We know that this is not, I'm not completing this square. We are going to give up at the end of this triangle and, frankly, do anything else. Which reminds me, I must order some more thread, although I do have quite a lot of the thread left. It's not like I'm short. But I will have to order more so that I get the same batch for all of it. But yeah, and I thought I was doing so well. And I think this is when you feel, hi Tench. Oh, I'm glad you made it. Oh, you haven't got power. I was thinking of you. And I'm so glad to hear you're okay. That'll make today slightly better than the storm that it has been. So thank you, Tenchy. Please keep safe, and because I will worry about you. But go and be safe. Go and keep your family well, and I'll speak to you soon, mate. But yeah. So let's undo these pins. So yes, for anyone else who's been out in the whole Florida thing, I feel for you dudes. I really do. 3 million of you or something without power right now. I mean, I know I was pissy when I had my 13-hour power cut, but, we don't tend to get, we don't really do, we had rain, but we don't really do weather in this country. We live in the blandest place in the world. So, we don't expect to suffer from similar things. I mean, obviously you don't expect the level of hurricane you've just had either, but yeah, it is not a common, power cuts are not common in the UK anymore. They were common in the 70s when everyone was striking to get better pay deals. Over the years, when I first moved up here actually, power cuts were like once a week for some reason. They just were. But it was half an hour or an hour. Although we did have a 2-day power cut at one point. That was no fun. And of course it was always in winter. It's never in summer when you don't need, when you can live without it. Because it's bright and, you've got long, bright days and you can live without the power. No. It's always in the middle of winter, so you've got no heating, nothing to do. You can't cook your dinner because it turns out your oven's electric or whatever. And you're sitting there freezing and you're ordering takeout because, well, that's all you've got, and it's the only way of keeping warm. And so, yeah, I have a lot of sympathy and concern for those affected. I mean, just being without power is infuriating and can be life-threatening if you're at home with medical conditions that require breathing equipment, electronic medical monitoring, and so for all of those people, I distinctly feel for you because you desperately need it. For average Joe like me, it's just annoying, and we can live with it because we can go camping, but I do feel for everyone affected by that hurricane because it's supposed to be the 4th worst one in recorded history kind of thing. And so I do have concern because obviously the amount of damage done, the potential unknown life loss that can happen as a result, and all that kind of thing. It's just not stuff we need. Plus, to the person who tied that animal up and left it at the side of the freeway, there's a special place for you, dude. And there are quite a few people who would like to talk to you about that act. And let's just say it'd be more sign language, and you will feel the impact of what we have to say. Let's just leave it as that. Yeah, we are threatening violence, frankly. So it was animals, and it's like fireworks. Animals do not understand. I mean, animals can sense really bad weather coming often, like earthquakes and things. And to abandon them at such a time when it's going to be so frightening. And it was a little puppy. It wasn't even, I won't say it would be better if it was an old dog, but an old dog who's maybe seen a few more things. It was quite a young puppy. And you're just cruel, dude. That's just so unnecessary. And yeah, I hope there's a special place for you. I hope you're found by all the wrong people. May your electricity never return. Yeah, there's no call for that. I mean, I have a real problem with people who are cruel to animals at the best of times. Now, they're infuriating. I have threatened to kebab my dogs quite a lot. In fact, only this weekend it was like, do you want a kebab? Because one of them wouldn't stop singing. But I don't actually mean it. I don't hit them, I don't, I feed them, I take good care of them, I worry about them, I love them intently. I spend most of my day frigging hugging them, making rooms, sleeping around them at night. They live the life of luxury, and anyone who says it's a dog life has not seen my dogs, right? Or many people's dogs. Well, a lot of people's dogs, obviously. There are assholes everywhere. But, I mean, you possibly can't hear, but there is snoring behind me. It is clearly such a stressful life. So it is. How do you... Animals, especially wild animals, even more so, you can't do anything for them during the fireworks, or through thunderstorms, or through hurricanes, where chances are they lose their families. Now, some animals mate for life, some just will shag anything that moves. And for the shag anything that moves things, it's not quite so traumatic. But, for example, foxes here in the UK, once they pick a mate, that's it. So if you ever see one dead by the side of the road, you know there's a broken family. You know that there is someone wondering why they didn't come home. And it is truly heart-wrenching. Because, you think of, if you had to tell a small child, mummy or daddy isn't coming home, that is the really hard thing to do. Now, if they're really, really small, they just kind of go, oh, okay, because it doesn't mean much to them. But the moment they're a bit older and it means something to them, and they really, truly understand the impact, and then weeks later it's like, but why haven't they come home yet? Well, we told you they're not coming home. Don't they love me? Well, it's not that they don't love you. Oh, well, then they must come home. They cannot come. And, it will go on for ages. And can you imagine that with animals? We don't know how much level of understanding they have. But if you've ever had multiple animals and one of them's died, they do know. They do understand. There was a video on was it on YouTube or Facebook? Doesn't really matter. They're all over the place. Of possibly a Bernese Mountain Dog cross something, Newfoundland style, big, huge, hairy thing. Stood kind of 5 foot tall when sitting down, one of those kind of things, right? And the owner posted the video, and he said, it was kind of, my husband died, a while ago. That's not right. That's wrong, isn't it? Let's undo that. Let's sort this out. My husband died a while ago, kind of thing. And I woke up this morning and this is what my dog was doing. And the dog was sitting in a room with pictures of the family, including the dog, on the wall, and howling like a banshee at it. You now tell me that dog doesn't know. It knew what was in those photos, and it was sad. You are not the Bobbin of choice. You are the Bobbin of choice. So, you need to be crossed over, I think, that way. And now we do this. Right, that's better. So yeah, animals do know. A friend of mine, when her cat died, I brought the poor deceased thing home because that was the instruction, because I'd had to take it to the vet. And the 3 dogs I think she had at the time, I placed the cat there. We went out later when she got back and dug a hole in the garden and buried it. And she was making a cup of tea. All 3 dogs watched and were intently staring at the exact same spot as if they were watching the cat walk round the countertop, as the cat had occasionally done when it was younger and alive. And it was truly the, you can't tell me that that's our imagination. 3 individual dogs staring at the exact same spot, literally watching at the right speed for a cat kind of sauntering round the edge of the counter. They were watching the cat, but wasn't there. Now, either it was a habit, but it didn't do it enough for it to be truly a habit, because it didn't tend to wander around the counter when I was there, because, well, it was, upstairs snoozing on the bed, usually. But the cat was known, I had seen it do it. So it was not it was something the cat would have done, but it was not, like every time she went to make a cup of tea that the cat did this. So it's not like it was a habit for the dog. It was clearly like they were watching the spirit of the cat walk round that countertop one last time. And it was quite... It really was that kind of, almost the, if you ever wanted proof there is life after death, there it is. Because, dogs will bark at next to nothing and it'll be a leaf rustling 6 roads over. But to have 3 dogs staring intently, like they could see the cat when it wasn't there, but doing something that the cat had done during its lifetime, but not that often, was just a bit surreal. So, life after death, I think we would be stupid to believe. I don't know, kind of half and half, right? Half of me thinks that the lights just go out and you're done. A bit like when you go to sleep. You're not really aware of time passing, just you wake up and hours have passed, right? And I think that it is, potentially, might be more painful than that, but potentially not less dissimilar in that, the lights will go out and that'll be kind of it. On the other hand, much like the is there alien life out there, we would be stupid to categorically say there is no life. Because the universe is a real friggin' big place. The definition of life is judged by our own viewpoint. Well, a plant's alive. You can kill a plant. Bacteria are alive. We kill them a lot because we don't like them. They make us sick. But they're all forms of life. So to assume that there is literally nothing that replicates and perpetuates its life force in some way would be a little naive in quite so much real estate. It really would. Now, sure, maybe if we found it, we would not immediately recognise it. It's not like they're all green, 4 foot tall, 2 arms, 2 legs, and kind of go, hi! Because, aliens probably don't do that. And there's quite a few memes as to why they would never do that. There was a picture of some people in a swimming pool, and it was raining. And the people in the swimming pool were hiding under an umbrella so they didn't get wet while standing in the swimming pool. People, this is why aliens do not come, right? Because there is no life on this planet of intelligent format that could, comprehend what they have to say to us, because some of us are dumb as rocks, we really are. And while we keep posting memes about all the dumb ones because it's funny, the ones with brain cells are going to get overlooked, frankly. Now this means that we can sleep soundly at night because we're not going to get, alien probed by aliens, but it's not going to encourage them to come now, is it? It's not too surprising we've not met aliens. But at the same time, now, aliens, life force of alternative means and on other planets, whether you wish to call that alien or not, because obviously, as a generic rule, we use the term alien for more humanoid-shaped aliens. We wouldn't really call bacteria alien. We'd call it alien bacteria, but we wouldn't call them aliens. We have gone to the moon. We have made it, sort of made it to Mars. We've sent things to Mars and had some data back. We as people have not yet been to Mars. We have not exactly gone anywhere yet in our own backyard. So I don't feel that we are really in a position to say that there is no alien life form, because, to be frank, we barely know, let's face it, you can count kind of on a couple of hands the number of people who've been to the moon. No one's been to Mars yet, so it's not like we've really investigated it too much. There still must be plenty to learn about the moon. If we drilled down, what's inside the moon? Is it just kind of a layer of dust on top? What's it made of? Is it similar in kind of substance to the Earth? It's just not, green and luscious because there's no atmosphere to have weather. If you applied weather to it, i.e. if you artificially watered it and put a few nutrients in the soil, would things... We haven't done any of this. We haven't even investigated the nearest rock, which, as someone at work kindly pointed out, from his house, it is quicker for people to get to the moon than it is for him to get to a certain point in our country, right? Which kind of sums it up, really. We don't know that much about some of our oceans. There is still quite a lot unknown. And it was interesting watching some of the stuff about the Ocean Gate thing. So we really are in a position that, while we think so much of ourselves, we've, invented I won't say the cure for COVID, but we've got, vaccines to help us not have COVID. We're trying to cure cancers, and to a large part, we have got to a point where we kind of can. And we've got targeted medical stuff that kind of uses your own body to kill the thing rather than actual medical chemicals, so it's so much safer. We can replace body parts with either other living body parts or even 3D printed body parts. We can do whole roths of things, yet we still don't really know how the brain works. We still cannot create life. If we deliberately stopped my heart, we can't, and it doesn't want to start again, well, that's me done. There is no, we'll hit the reset button and it'll all be good. Even though I was healthy when we started, it doesn't work that way. So there is this, why is this not adding up? I missed a hole, that's why. Easier to undo it, actually. Yeah, something easier to undo it. So, we have a lot we could learn before even leaving our planet, and then we've got, the moon to investigate, which, is only just down the road, kind of cosmically, and we could do quite a little bit with that. Apparently, the Chinese are currently in process of planning a moon base so that they can do exactly that, and hats off to them, it's about bloody time, because of course NASA have declared stop the space shuttle because they were not planning to do any kind of moon visits, and which seems kind of slightly short-sighted, frankly. So I don't know. I would, I think that there's plenty of investigation and much still to learn. I don't necessarily buy into the God created the earth bit. I think there's a bit more sciencey than that. But I'm also not against the fact that there is God. I'm just not necessarily pro-God at the time. I'm a bit on the fence about that. There is certainly stuff we do not know and understand. And what is magic? Magic is the ability to do something that does not make sense, or you cannot see how it's done. I was watching a video on things like how David Copperfield disappeared here and appeared in Hawaii, and all those kind of things, the usual, but not the one with the Statue of Liberty and the mirrors, but that kind of thing, how some of the more unbelievable things are done. And some of it of course is plants in the audience, but it's also planning some questionable footage. There was one with, who's the street guy? He's rather popular, but he did like 4 buckets of fish with, well, he did a bucket of fish with almost like an endless bucket of fish. But as the guy points out, there's no proof it's the same bucket. And in one of the clips you can actually see the flap at the false bottom has come away, because you can see it's not flush against the bottom. But also, if you pay attention to the crowd, as I was doing, because that's what I was looking at rather than the fish, because, I know what fish falling out of a bucket looks like. It's not the same crowd. In the very first bucket, the kid behind him, in shot, has got like a cast or a bandage on his foot. A bit of shaking a bucket later, there's a girl in a pink dress. A bit later, it's a boy. It's not the same crowd. It's almost not consecutive. It's not even like he came and threw fish on the floor and they all kind of went, wow, that's a lot of fish. Because, they were in Africa and it was, they're not exactly rich over there and they would have liked the fish. That's cool. But at the same time, it was quite clear that this was over a period of time, because the people had either moved sufficiently and you didn't see them move, so it was not continuous footage, or it was even consecutive days. Plus, there's the very first bit where you see like a fish fall on the floor, and there are other footage of buckets emptying onto emptying fish, but there's no proof there were no other fish already on the floor. So it's not necessarily even in order. And it was an interesting thing, because there is a thing called, I can't remember, it's something blindness, but where you're so, the question will say like, how many people in white shirts walk down the road, and you're so busy looking for people in white shirts that you miss the fact that they change all the colours on the cars that are parked along the road. And in fact, I've been in one of those videos, and because, well, I can count and look at other things, I did spot that the colours of the cars had changed, and they were really quite impressed that I had noticed. But what I hadn't also noticed was all the houses had changed too. I mean, I didn't notice everything, but I had noticed considerably more than is deemed normal. So, but it is also a recognised kind of thing. Now, where have these gone? Were these you? Hang on. Where are these you? The you. It is you. I was right the first time. You. So yes, you can get blind for looking at something because you're too busy counting balls, or how many red balls are in the picture. You don't notice that. How many times have you seen the terrible kind of advert where it's like, pick a card, and there'll be 5 cards on the screen. It'll be like, Queen of Hearts, King of Spades, Jack of Diamonds, 3 of Clubs, 2 of Hearts, right? And then on the next page, they say, right, remember your card, and then give you another set of cards, and it goes, your card's missing. Now, the cards will be the same cards and the same colour, so they will transpose diamond and heart and club for spade, but none of the original cards are there. It's not just your cards missing. So of course your card's missing. They're all missing. And people don't notice because they're concentrating, going, oh, I picked the Jack of Spades, and, well, it's not there. Oh, that's really clever. Yes, because none of them are there. If you can remember two cards, you'll notice that both of them aren't there. It's not magic. It's, deception. And so, magic is literally that. It is the lack of understanding. It is the not noticing or not being able to qualify the difference or what changed. It is, it is all of those things. It is the ability to be fooled by something else. And so all the things that, seem magical, like how the brain works, one day, probably many, many, many years from now, but one day, we probably will work out how it works. And it will become, oh yeah, we worked that out. But until we do, it's magic. Back in the caveman days, fire was magic because they hadn't worked out that you needed the right stones to bash together. That, yeah, sure, okay. When Og, by the way, is a main feature in many of my conversations at work. Og the caveman and the Ogettes, the tribe of Og. Og on this occasion, he's gone, he's found a couple of stones, and when he smacks them together, there's this spark. And if he does it near some dry wood, it goes whoomph, and then there's warm, right? This is glorious. But if you take any two stones, it doesn't work. It's got to be the right ones. And my favourite Og stories basically involved food. Because you think today we have so many people who have nut allergies and gluten allergies and can't have sodium and can't have this, can't have that. And I'm not saying that they're problem people. They're not. But if you think we're now in the 21st century, right? So I've got earache. And how many people over the course of humanity have died before we were capable of testing food for toxicity? And even now, we can't always guarantee it because some of you buggers are allergic to shit, right? So, you think, Og and the caveman style, Og, me found plant. It looked pretty, yum yum, berry. Dead, right? Og brings home, a big punnet of berries. They look really interesting. The whole tribe eat them. Oh look, next morning, tribe dead, everyone gone except for Og, who was feeling a bit rough anyway because he was tired from all the hunting and gathering, and so he didn't have any because he fed up on bison or whatever, and so or the you can't eat it raw, you have to cook it. Or like the blowfish, you can eat everything but that bit. And all the people over the course of years who died to find out that this is poisonous when raw, this is poisonous in general. This is poisonous but fun. This is, to all of you who smoke, right? The TV depicts that your first cigarette has you kind of puking your lungs up and going green. I personally have never done this. Mainly because both my parents smoked, and I thought it was frigging gross, so I never even tried it, because I never even wanted to try it. I didn't even kind of want to see where, what the fun of this was, because, well, I'd seen the videos of people going green and coughing their guts up, and so it's kind of like, so if when you try it, you feel really sick and you cough your lungs up, why'd you do it again? But if you think back, somewhere in the history of humanity, someone set light to a bunch of tobacco, so a bunch of leaves, and kind of went, whoa, I really like that. I'm, thinking of other plants as well, well, I really like that, man. And there is a bit of you that kind of goes, I get why they kind of did it, because, I'm not going to say cannabis and that is harmless necessarily, because I don't believe it is. But it is the more harmless end of the scale. So I will grant you that. But, because, no offence, all you want to do is eat Mars bars. So, not that I've done it, but I've watched other people. It is the more harmless thing. It's not like it makes you angry or violent, usually. It can make you a bit paranoid, but doesn't usually bring out violence and things. It makes you go to sleep and hungry, so that's not so bad. But, and in some countries it's legal, not in the UK, by the way. Well, it is, but it's not, if you know what I mean. They don't like it, but it's not actually illegal to have some, whereas other substances is actually illegal to have them. They just don't like you having it. So, over the course of humanity, how many thousands of people died to find out that you can have a McDonald's? To have onions and relish and eat cows and how to cook it and all of those kind of aspects. How can... Why is it every time I stop and look at this it doesn't make sense? I don't seem to have enough bobbins, which was kind of where I thought I went wrong before. So I must have... Yes, I screwed it up. Let's rewind, people, again. I do this a lot, as you can tell. And I really don't need to, because we're not keeping it, but... whatever. Why did that not undo that? Why is that now even a bigger pickle? Stab. Oh, it must be the other way around then. There we go, over. Right. Stab. Over, over. Stab. Remember I got to here and went, that doesn't look right. Well, the answer is it's not. And I need to work out why. It's not right. Stab. Right. You undo you. That's because you should have had a pin between you two. Yeah. And then we finish you two. There we go. Back on the road to success. Right. So yes, just imagine how many meats and animals and plants especially, were sampled by early Og's friends and died to find out that you can't eat that. Or that eating that was a painkiller. Or eating that made you feel better. I'm not pretending that they were necessarily great into medicine in the days of Og, but, some things do have a semi-antibacterial germ capacity, and so there is quite reasonably the principle that people would have potentially come across it in at least some places and gone, munch, munch, ooh, so-and-so who looked to be dying of some crap we normally die of didn't die because they ate this and they said they felt better. Obviously Chinese herbal medicine is a really big thing and has been around for a really long time. And seems to be very effective, more to the point. Otherwise we wouldn't still be here because, well, they'd have been dismissed as quacks, so that must be a thing. But then there's also this is good to eat but only for a bit until it's gone off, and it's gone off when this is true, or this is not edible until it's gone off. There was a particular coffee bean that was highly sought after many years ago, and this is not, it was thought to be a joke in a film, but it's actually true apparently, which is that certain coffee beans are only edible, for want of a better word, consumable, once they've been through the digestive tract of another animal. How much do you like your coffee now? I've never been a coffee person, so it doesn't bother me in the slightest. But how much do you like that coffee now? Changing your mind at all? Yeah, it's certainly one to make you think twice about, well, what's in your coffee. And so it is, you know. But again, who discovered that? Who was the brave, weird, drugged up individual, because there must have been drugs involved, who discovered that certain coffee beans, or certain beans, when having been through the digestive tract of an animal, followed by being roasted and dried, and then mixed with hot water, still doesn't taste nice, but didn't do you harm anymore. I won't say does you good, because that's a whole new kind of potential lie effect, but, you know, it doesn't do you harm, doesn't kill you anymore. I'm sorry, but, yeah, that's quite a chain of events to happen. Yeah. Og and the Ogettes are feature quite a lot in stories, because obviously, you know, they were early people. Well, not literally, I mean, obviously, I don't expect to go into a cave and find a picture and underneath it the name Og, but, you know what I mean. You know, the early Viagra, there probably was one, you know, eat this bean, you go for hours, you know. Someone would have been there. Someone would have signed up for that. 11 o'clock. I probably should quit in a minute. But I'm near to the bottom of this, and I think we can manage this today, so... And that's going to be my aim. Now, are you actually from back there? You're from actually back there. You live under there. You, potentially. Now, you are wrapped around the wrong side of the pin. There we go. You are the working pair. And I will need, therefore, this pair. Is it you? Which two is it? It is you two. I'm going to be naughty, and I'm going to briefly lift this pin up, and I'm going to undo you two. Sneak, 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 sneak. So now there are 4 bobbins coming out before this pin. Pin you back up as if you were good and healthy. And we can now, stop bending, we can now poke you back under the cushion as unused. You will be the last pair. You are the next pair. Fixing mistakes, or in this case, frigging the solution. Now obviously, in a previous video, I frigged a corner in a manner that was not really going to be detectable, and that was fine. This is blatant and ugly butchering in that, obviously, for example, this comes off this pin here and would normally be for this bottom row, but I'm having to force it up a row because I screwed up. And so in doing that, obviously, it's going to look wrong, for want of a better word. It'll be fairly uniform because they're mostly all wrong, but still not the point. I didn't cross them over. There we go. So these are getting a bit short. Yeah, I put far too much cotton on because obviously when I started I had the intention that I would like to do the whole square if I was pleased with it, and I'm not unpleased with it, so that's a thing. But at the same time, spangles, we are not completing the spangles. I mean, I guess in theory I could have got to the end of the triangle and gone, right, I will now undo each bobbin and change it out for a nicer bobbin, but I've made too many mistakes, so we're not going to be doing that in a hurry. And so we will judge the quarter on its own merit, and then probably throw all this cotton away, which is somewhat wasteful. I mean, it's not ridiculously expensive, but it's still not cheap. I'd rather not, but I'm not dealing with the spangles. What am I doing? Ah, Jesus, woman. There's me being cloth stitching the whole way across, and that's not what we're doing, is it? We're not cloth stitching, are we? We're doing ground stitch, because, well, we're doing ground stitch. And this one looks wrong for some reason. So you are the other side of that. No. I wonder why this was kind of feeling a little bit. And the answer was, because I'm doing it friggin' wrong. It's just stupid woman. Stupid woman! Yeah. So yes, we will get to the bottom of this section and call it a day for today. Even though I did wind my bobbins, for those who missed. See? Where are they? There they are. I wound the additional bobbins we need to complete the triangle. I was a good girl. I did that after work today. Didn't take me too long, unlike winding these bobbins, because I also knew I was only going to be doing, you know, tiny little square in the bottom corner of this triangle, so I didn't put much on it, because, well, it's not going to go very far. I still put too much on it, because I inevitably do. That's how I seem to roll. I seem very good at that. I'm not very good at estimating the amount of cotton I will need on a bobbin. I always overestimate. Well, it's slightly better to over than under. I mean, you can join, but, you know, it could show, whereas if you've got enough, you've got enough, you know. Ow! Oh, sharp. So yes, we will, with any luck, make progress tomorrow afternoon when we've got more time and daylight and stuff, and we can then point and laugh at all the mistakes that I make, because this well, we already know there's another one at least, so clearly the mistakes of Liz are plentiful in this, and despite me trying very much to pay attention, it is the spangles. I'm pretty sure that every time I've screwed up, it's because the spangles have been mating and faffing, and it is the mental disruption of the tangled, annoying spangle that has meant that I've either done something I shouldn't, not done something I should, that's thrown a lot of the wobbles out. I'm not going to sound perfect without spangles, but I do think that part of the reason I've made quite so many mistakes with this, especially when it's kind of only 3 stitches, is simply because of the spangles, and the fact that, well, they just suck. So I do think that I'm blaming spangles. Have I missed one? No. Just checking. Because there's getting quite a few bobbins on this side. So yeah, I am in part blaming the spangles because every time they disrupt my mental thought, even though a stitch might only be cross twist cross or cross twist pin, cross twist and move on to the next one, it's too easy to end up slightly out of sync and miss a bit, do an extra bit, forget to do, and then screw it up for later. So yeah, I think that is a really distinct part of my issue, is the spangle and the fact that it disrupts my thought. It changes the flow of just going bobbiny, 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 bobbiny. And as a result of that, it does mean then that I'm distracted from my flow of thoughts. I'm more prone to making errors. Even though I know I stopped, you self-doubt as where you're at. So I am blaming the spangle, which is why they need to go, because they are not going to make it better for me. And as you found, it's not like they don't twist anyway, so they can still cross and mate. So if they're going to cross and mate, I'd rather have them usable when they're not crossed and mated than crossed and mated and annoying. So yeah, getting a bit warm. It's not like my heating's on. I know my heating's not on because I haven't turned it on yet. I do occasionally turn it on to take some of the chill off, because like it was minus something this morning, so I had it on for half an hour to take the edge off it. But it's not usually cold in here. You see, something doesn't look right with you either. You should be more involved with that pen. You really should. You should definitely be more involved with that pen. You should be far more involved with that first pen. You should be coming out the other side of it. So what I'm going to do, just to make the tension a little bit more practical, let's do that. Right, so crusty twist, so we know there's another mistake now. You see, this is the problem. You look back and you go, how's that wrong? How can that be wrong? Well, the answer is apparently easily, even though technically it's not hard. So you're too long. You're falling off the bottom of my pillow. Let me scooch you up a bit. There we go. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. I should be stealing from the back, but I'm not. I'm stealing from my pot. Actually, let's move you sideways. A bit more out the way. This gets a bit crowded down the bottom here. Nearly that. Nearly there, people. Nearly there. Zoom out again. You can have a bit more of a watch from a distance. Nearly there. Seem a lot quicker if I don't talk. But it's probably even more boring because you can't really see that well, and if I'm not talking, I mean, you know, why would you be here really? So here we go, we have finally got to the bottom. We've got a few threads that have mated around a few pins back here. As always, they just do. And we spent hours trying to unmate them from the pins. But we can now, for example, get my pusher, and if I turn the pillow slightly and move the microphone, stunk my way down this side a bit, that's all. And then we can go back and steal a load of pins. So we can uncover all of this section now back here with the ground stitch without too much care in the world, because it is safely back there in the distance. We have left that zone. Yep. So let's zoom in and see what we can see. Let's have a good look at this section. Let me make it bigger on my screen because at the moment it's a little window in a window. Let's see if we can sharpen that up a little bit. That's gonna be as good as it gets. So once again, I'm incapable of doing ground stitch accurately, as is proved by, she says, trying to find it on the screen with a pin. This bit here, I fucked up. And as we know, I fucked up here. I clearly screwed up along, if I scroll down to the bit we did today, you can see that these first two threads on these two pins kind of go sideways, and then this pin didn't have any, so we had to steal from the pin below, and then we stole from the pin below, which is why these are all a funny angle. Looking at the rose ground, yeah, there's some funky stuff going on looking there too. One about here looks a bit funky. So yes, this would not pass muster for the final object, but we are definitely getting closer. So if I zoom out just a bit more, we can see that I've only got this little bit at the bottom to do. I've got the 5 pairs to hang along these points here, which will mean we can complete. And you may recall, we are going to try an alternative stitch, just because we can, to see if that would be nicer than just more ground stitch in the middle. So we will have kind of a half and half effect to look at. And we can then take it off, put it on a dark background so you can see what the hell I'm doing. Let's see if I can add that filtery bit in again. Right, let's add that filter back in. It doesn't help a lot, but it does kind of help a little. Yeah, so it does help a bit. And if I change to this one, so this is the more full picture. I know it's not straight by a long shot. There you go. Straighten up a bit for you. So as you can see, we've done quite a lot of our triangle now. We're getting down to the bottom. We've got what looks like the bright patch at the top. Seriously, how is that brighter than the rest of it? I know this is because these have got pins, which makes it look shadier. If I zoom in a little bit, I know this does help a little bit with the white thread. So if I go back and show you in the ground stitch that we uncovered, it's less obvious because it's not quite so zoomed in, but there is this chunky piece kind of here that's a bit shit, that we've uncovered from a couple of days ago, which is why this is so difficult, because the pins kind of mask some of this and you don't really realise until you take the pin out. And of course, by the time you take the pin out, you don't really want to go back that far. In theory, and my words of wisdom would be, is the amount of pins I've got in are generally slightly excess of what a lot of lace makers would have. But trying to put the pins back in is an art form. And so if the pins come out, it's kind of stuck like that, really, in my humble opinion. I mean, you can undo it, it's painstaking and you can do it. But obviously it's much harder. You're making your own life so much harder if you do that. And so we will have to do regular reviews and quality assurance. Hello Shay, how you doing? It's good to see you. Hope you're safe over there somewhere. And not too near the hurricane. You've caught me at the end, I'm sorry. I was just going over my faux pas and some of the last plans, and obviously I'll be around tomorrow afternoon from 2 o'clock my time, which is calculation in progress. I've got a cat thing in front of me, so it's going to be in about 14 hours. But don't worry, Shay, they're all on YouTube. You can be really boring and catch up on YouTube. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend you've missed a lot. There's a lot of me ranting and wittering on about random shite. Everything from Og the Caveman, my car accident, and this is just today's. What constitutes handmade? Now that's a bit more philosophical and would have been interesting with a bunch of people to talk about it amongst, but I have... Hi, Sugar Bear. I have a theory. Sorry, I missed you. I missed you. I'm really sorry. I should not have missed you. I really apologise. I don't exactly have too many people to keep a track of. I mean, Christ. But Sugar's a monkey. Yes, I know. But it is the question of what makes handmade. So I'll kind of recant my earlier question. What counts as handmade? Now, clearly, this is handmade. Hours upon hours of cursing pins, sticks, and string, right? You can't really say this is not handmade. If I take a ball of wool and some knitting needles and go clackety clackety clack and make a jumper, the jumper, I don't think many people would argue, is handmade. Let's pick sewing. So if I get a needle thread and some cloth and I don't know, make a pincushion or whatever, fill it full of fluff or something, most people would agree that's handmade because I sat there and I sewed it. What about a hand-powered sewing machine? Now, it's hand-powered, so literally the moment I take my hand off it, nothing happens. I'd argue that's handmade because without you forcing it to do things, nothing happens. What about an electric sewing machine where you kind of got a bit like driving a car, you steer it, but you don't make it because you just kind of rest your foot on the pedal and it kind of goes zoom, right? Is that handmade? Now, if you do, like, so for example, as we know, Liz is planning on making a 43 cm by 97 cm window covering net curtainy thing, right? If I then... Yes, you see, that's exactly my thought. Where does that division lie? Now, to me, for example, if I hand wove, because it's the loom, nothing happens, and I'm batting and I've got to fucking measure all the strings and put them on and thread them, and nothing happens without me poking it with a stick, I would argue that's kind of handmade because, well, there almost isn't a level below that. But if I then put a hem on it with my sewing machine, it's still 99.99999% handmade. But if I'm making a patchwork quilt, now I made, as I mentioned earlier, an 8 foot by 8 foot patchwork quilt by hand from hexagons. I think I've still got the sore finger to prove it. And that was 1995 or 96. Must be 95. It was a long time ago. And I still remember the pain. I still have it. It's in my old house, but I still have said thing. But I also made the other side. So I actually made 2 8 foot by 8 foot out of hexagons thing and sewed every last bastard stitch by hand. That clearly is handmade. Now, no offence to you Americans, it is very common over there for you to do patchworking and you don't do what you like to call English paper piecing. Yeah, I don't do English paper piecing. I cut that out of the piece of paper because it's just a waste of a paper. If you sew it onto the piece of paper and then you sew it and you rip the paper out, it's a waste of a lot of paper. And I'm not overly green, but I'm not that ungreen. So I sew where the join would be. Right? So I don't know whether I've just lost you to ads or not. So I'm going to kind of mumble about a bit because, well, for 90 seconds or something, you may be in ads, and I don't know whether you get the ads or not because I don't know, do I? So I shall wait for the ads to do their thing. A bit of Coke to wet the whistle because I didn't start off with a full one, so I'm a bit lacking on liquids at the moment. Do. Waiting for ads. Waiting for ads. They don't even recycle? Oh no. Now, still waiting for ads, and I want to talk about it. Getting itchy, want to talk about it. OCD, kind of ADHD stuff kicking in, really want to talk about it. Come on, ads, go away. Come on, ads, go away. Can't be far away. Come on. Come on. Seriously, go away. We can't be far away. Really can't be far away. Come on. Yay, the ads are done. Right, so I don't do English paper piecing. I do it in the style of English paper piecing, but what I do is I put the hexagons together and much like the people who machine sew it, I sew along making the seam, but without the paper, and I do it by hand. And that's what I did for, well, it's saved 50 billion sheets of paper, and a lot of extra sewing, because of course if you tack them all onto the bits of paper, you then have to untack them all on the bits of paper, you then throw away on the bits of paper, because you can't really reuse them, and so it just seems such a wasteful way to me to do it. So I skipped the whole paper portion of it. But a lot of Americans, and it's not a dig, tend to machine their patchworking. Now, obviously there's different styles and it's not all hexagons, but you know, they make a lot of quilts and they do them using, you know, patchworking principles with a machine. Well, now if you're using your electric sewing machine, as many of them do, and you can see plenty of videos on YouTube and they kind of go, so you join these together, then you do this, and you're kind of going, Now, to me, an electric sewing machine, I may use my electric sewing machine when I've finished my lace curtain to sew on a bias tapes type object at the top so that it will hang with an element of strength. But because I will have spent billions of hours lace making, it is such a small percentage that it almost doesn't really matter. But if you do nearly all of it with the machine, and all you really do is kind of go feed, 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 are you making it on the machine? Now, let's pretend that you decide that this is still machine-based. That this is still handmade because, again, you are doing it. Well, my sewing machine, fancy piece of crap that it is capable of machine embroidery. And I raised this question on Facebook earlier, this exact question: what counts as homemade, or handmade more accurately? Now, my machine, in theory, because the practice is, well, not simple, a bit like the simpleness of lace making is really quite simple, practice not so much. But my machine, you trap your fabric with some other fabrics, you sew it down a bit so it can't move, you put it in a hoop, you pick a pretty picture, thread it up with a colour, and in theory, hit a button, and it will embroider that for you while you go and have a cup of coffee, tea, Coke, whatever. Well, that's not handmade in my... It is, like you said earlier, it's potentially homemade. It's not mass industry made. But you can't really call it handmade now, can you? Even though maybe... Oh, don't get me wrong. That's my kind of embroidery too, which is why I bought it. Duh, right? But it also isn't that simple, because you put all the thing together, you hit go, and it goes so, and you don't let it run at full speed because, well, frankly, it just pings needles everywhere and gets the sulks. And you kind of go for a pee or something, and you're not even 2 steps away from the machine, and it's already screwed up. So you don't go at full whack, unlike all the videos, right? So it can take quite a while. I did a number of things, right? And I made a little motif. It was like 1.5 inch square. I did a couple of letters as I was playing with an idea. And in the end, I got some violets and some violet thread, shocker, and put it on a white background and made a makeup bag for a trans friend's 21st birthday. And I was really pleased with it in the end, but the first one, threw it in the bin. It got caught the way through, and it was going chonk, 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 doing its movie thing. And then it went, nom, 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 and ate it. Literally, it dug a great frigging hole in the cloth and tied the most almighty knot, and it took me 30 minutes to... because you can't just lift the whole top of the sewing machine off and get into the guts to unpick all the thread. It basically had really eaten itself. But it'd done like a quarter of it. It's not like it kind of went, poke, screw this, I'm not doing this. It'd been going for like 20 minutes. So, and even making the one that I used, it still tried to fucking up, and I had to carefully unpick loads of it and try and rub the cloth to make it look reasonable, and then kind of go back on the pattern in the thing, which is easier said than done, and try and line it all up again to make sure it was going to continue where it left off. And it was not as easy as pressing a button. It should be, and you're supposed to be able to do it at maximum revs like a Formula 1 car, but frankly it's kind of chunk, 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 and if you go for the level of chunk, 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 not chunk, 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 as they show in all the videos. If you go to YouTube, you can find such videos, and yeah, mine doesn't do that. And apparently, technically, it should go in for a service because there's something wrong with it, but well, it was brand new, so it shouldn't have something wrong with it. But I don't use that much, partly because, well, I'm shit at it. Secondly, because it was not my primary reason for buying it. It was just something I wanted to be able to do because it had that capability. So I bought the extra bit that allows, i.e. the bit that moves the hoop around. But clearly, kind of lining it up, hitting go, is not handmade. I will agree with you, it is homemade, but it is not handmade. Then you get into knitting. So a pair of needles, maybe some, double pointed needles, so you've got 4 or 5 of the bloody things, but a minimum pair of needles, ball of wool, clackety clackety clack, jumper appears, that's handmade. What about the knitting machine that you do the whole zzz, 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 zzz? Is that handmade or is that homemade? Now again, it doesn't move without you moving it, so perhaps you still feel that that one's handmade. However, you can make a jumper in 90 minutes, not like 9 days, so maybe you don't count that quite as handmade, because every stitch will be perfectly uniform. It's not going to have that handmade rustic feel. What about the knitting machine that has the powered motor, so now you do not power it going backwards and forwards, it does that for you? Well, then that gets into the pressing a button and going off and having a coffee variety. You are its supervisor. You're not even really its operator, such as you operate the car. The car drives you there, you steer it and advise it where you want to go and to slow down and speed up. Same with the sewing machine, electric sewing machine. You are the operator. You are not really the crafter. It is. But if all you really do is hit a button and, maybe doodle a bit on your computer first, a bit like my lace design program, but if you do that and then print a button and off it goes and makes it, well, yes, you're the designer, you're the operator, but you're not really the crafter. It did all of that for you. And anyone with that machine who pressed that button, the same thing would happen. You do not have to be good at it, it's good at it, you just said do it. Because you can buy patterns after all. So, my philosophical debate, and much like home cooking, heating it up is not really cooking. Adding an ingredient, if you've got a packet of something and you add 2 ingredients to it, you're still not really cooking, you're just enhancing something that's already there. It's a bit like buying a birthday card and rubber stamping or sticking a sticker on it. It's not quite, you didn't make the card. So, this is the kind of thing that goes through my brain a lot, by the way. Welcome to the inside of Liz. As we already know, Liz's brain has the, hey, I want to do something really dumb, and wants to make, lace curtains the size of the planet. But the concept of where does handmade stop? Where does it maybe, as you say, become homemade, not handmade? Is it... Because to some people, if it's not made in a mass-produced factory, it's handmade. You get hand-finished items. Have you really seen what counts as the hand-finishing? If you buy a vase that's hand-finished, what that usually means is they dotted the eyeballs. And nothing more. Well then, kind of minimal effort now, isn't it, really? So I do find myself debating some of these and contemplating these deep philosophical questions. Because, well, I want to know. And it is great to have a couple of people to talk about it with, because, my brain cell's been thinking about this for most of today, to be honest. When does it cease to be? And I think we've kind of all agreed that, to a large extent, if you are physically providing all of the movement and power, it is handmade. So much like a weaving loom, unless you've got the electric ones that lift the sharp and all you do is go next, that's not quite the same, sorry, and that's part of the reason I don't have one. In fact, I went the other direction, which was to get the draw loom, which means I have to pull like a frigging organist, because not only now do I be going batty, 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 batty with my hands, I then have to stop and pull pulleys and stamp with things with my legs, so it is very much like being an organ player. A church organ player, I should be more accurate. And so I went that way specifically because in my head, much as I know I'm getting older and clearly I'm never going to get healthier, that's for sure. Well, I can get healthier, but only to a certain degree. There are ailments about me that will never get better because I have deformed bits and broken bits and, bits of me no longer exist. But then, so they're not going to regrow, and I'm never going to, much as on one of my looms I have to do box splits to be able to do the tying up of the treadle. I am still capable of that. Yes, I'm 52, and probably nearly £300, but I can still do box splits around the front of my loom, so bite me. I'm not going to say it's comfortable, but it's more comfortable than trying to find out where else to put my legs. So I do that, but I don't tend to use that loom quite so much anymore. I've got a different one now, and I can lie on the floor, which is easier. But it is that kind of principle, is when you have to go through pain and effort and frustrations of doing it, it is very much hand done. When the more something else is doing it for you, it's like a percentage, there's a scale. And when it becomes like the electric sewing machine where all you do is kind of laying down your speaking, yeah, I'm very much like that. I will point out there's a wooden bar in the way, and it is exactly where you want to be. And if you have boobage, it's not funny, which I do, and so it is not funny, but at least you can lie down and do it, and then of course the dogs come and sit on you because they think it's funny. So it can be rather amusing, because dog's idea of help truly isn't. Even though he's still snoring. Seriously, yes, you are awake. You have such an easy life, you lazy bag of fur. But dogs must be involved. It is like the law, isn't it? The moment you do anything on the floor, they must be part. Actually, the moment you do anything, they must be part of it. Let's face it, you can't pee on your own, can you? Can't be trusted to do that, despite your age. You might fall down the hole. But it's, for me, I think, as we've all agreed, while the huge majority of it is done by you, if you machine sewed on a label, if you machine sewed on 2 buttons to a cardigan or something, if you... something along those lines, it's not enough of a percentage that it detracts from the handmade item, because 99.9% of everything you see was handmade. When all you really did was cut out a few bits of fabric and feed it in the machine, now I know there's skill in that and all the rest of it, but it becomes the machine made it. So it's still homemade, and we all know that you can make beautiful things, but it becomes a bit more like, because a friend of mine said, what her answer to my question was, well, if you picked all of the parts, what if you bought a kit? I mean, you can buy a knitting kit, it will give you needles, wool, pattern. All you do is provide the mangling of the yarn. Well, is that then handmade by your description? Because you're saying that I didn't pick it because it came in a certain colour and I didn't have any choice with that. So, well, is that not then handmade? Well, of course it's handmade. You sat and knitted it. But if you bought like a quilting thing that provided pre-cut fabric, which some of them do, and you fed it through a machine, love, you barely glued it to the paper almost. I mean, you know, in the equivalent of the world, you provided the least amount of effort to turn it from parts to end result. And so you don't really get the credit for that. I mean, it's still a skill. I mean, because clearly using a sewing machine is frankly a bit of a skill. Sewing in a straight line is way harder than it sounds. But it's a bit like cycling at slow speed. Going slowly and in a straight line is really hard. But you have to have everyone has a different cut-off. So for me, and clearly some of you, it is if you made... drawing a straight line's really hard too. And I once got told off by a teacher, and I've never forgotten this. I was like 10, and I underlined something with my ruler, but didn't press hard enough, but was pressing harder at an angle with my pen than I was pressing down on the ruler. And as a result, at the end of the line, it kind of took a dive bomb. And I got a real telling off from the teacher for not using a ruler. And of course, I got really lippy. I had used a ruler, just badly. But I'd use a ruler, so don't be telling me I didn't. I used a ruler. I was just shitting it. But it's like drawing a circle. Drawing a perfect circle is frankly impossible without tools. So sometimes tools are a good thing, and tools help you achieve, like knitting needles, help you achieve the knitting process. But they literally do nothing. They are 100% inanimate, and they cannot do anything. They are not moving parts, and the more moving parts there are, and the more they arguably do for you. So a loom has moving parts, but not in the same way. Yes, a few things go up, yes, a few things go down, but they don't really move without you stamping on them. When you have a sewing machine, you turn a handle and there's like voodoo inside. It goes round and it causes that to go up and down, and it causes... There's a lot of moving parts. So the sectioning of hand to home is a bit more grey. The electric one definitely is much more home-ish than handish. I mean, it's not wrong to call it hand, but it's also not right to call it hand. As I say, it depends maybe how much of it there is. And so I think we've agreed that as a generic rule, if you primarily are the driving source of mangling of whatever it is you're doing, because think of a potter's wheel. You can get an electric potter's wheel that makes it go round and round and round and round. But you do the work. Nothing really happens without you. And that would be deemed handmade. But you can also get a potter's wheel where you have to kind of pump it. Now, we definitely agree that's handmade. But is the electric one handmade? Well, my argument is yes, because it's fucking dead voodoo shit. But in a lot of ways, sorry potters, but the wheel does a lot of the work, the kiln does a lot of the work, you are more of an operator, and it is a fine line. It's very close, and I would not want to detract from their skill because they're frigging talented people, but at the same time, they're a little bit more operator than crafter, perhaps. But again, difference between crafter and crafter, if you know what I mean. Where do you cease to be the crafter and the machine does the crafting? A wood turner. Well, you have a machine turning the wood. But of course, you're doing the cutting. You're deciding when you need to change the speed. So it falls into the same realm as the electric sewing machine. But you can't really not. But of course you do have to hand finish it. You do have to plan it. You do have to draw all over it. You do have to sand it. There will be bits that you don't just put it on the machine, go zzz, zzz, make it thin and do all the right bumpy bits, wipe a bit of sandpaper over it and go ta-da. That is often not how it works. I know. So again, there are many crafts that when you think about them, it's different almost with every craft, because crochet cannot be machine done. So if you've got crochet, they can't, that's it. It is handmade. There is no other way of making it. Lace can be machine made, but it's not the same. It's not done in the same way. It's similar, but it's not the same. So again, to a large extent, if you have handmade lace, it is handmade. There really isn't a choice in that. But knitting, we know that it could be a machine or it could be a person, and not every craft is equal. But as I said earlier, you wouldn't walk into the Sistine Chapel and go, hey, can I look at your sketch on the ceiling? Because it's a marvellous work. But at the same time, he did all that by hand. So, not quite the same, but you wouldn't put it down as a sketch. You wouldn't have it as doodle or graffiti, even if it was graffiti. Even if he was not supposed to have done it, and it technically is graffiti, it's marvellous, and frankly deserves to be up there and remarked as to be one of the greatest paintings of all time. However, he did it by hand. Now, what if you program a computer to do it? Well, it's still done by hand. All of the hard work behind it is by hand, but the computer actually did it in the end. Oh, because I write computer programs, so I'm very aware of this. So is the program is handmade, as long as you didn't use too much Chat GPT, which, by the way, I don't use, because I'm old schools. I can use it. It's not, but the few times I asked it to do something that I thought was really frigging simple, it fucked it up. I asked it to take 2 points, so I had a bunch of objects, and I said, take the furthest left one and the furthest right one, take those as lines, make a straight line in the middle, and interspace all the others equidistant along that line. Now, your high school maths will tell you take the number of items, add 1, divide the distance by that number, and place them along those distances. Well, the first time...
I'm your current voice.
Oh, shut up, Alexa. The first time it did it, didn't actually move any of the objects. It did some calculations, but didn't actually move any of them. The next one, it moved them into a line, but didn't actually space them out right. The third one, it went back to not moving them at all. Then Then you had to identify. It couldn't identify which was left and right, even though it knows which is left and right. You had to specifically say, take this one, and those are your endpoints, because apparently that was too hard for it to work out. And I'm sitting there going, I spent more time asking you this question than it would have taken me to write the code. And this, I thought, was a simple thing to do, because it really is. I mean, we almost did that kind of level of stuff in junior school. I mean, I was explaining to my ex-husband the other day, because actually it was about a couple of years ago now, but he wanted to place like 3 pictures on his wall, and I said, well, you got 3 pictures, you take the length of your wall, you divide it by 4, and you place them, and he went, well, why 4? Well, because if you put one at the front or the end, it's all off to one side, so you need like the holes in the middle. Oh, okay. And he did and went, oh, that worked really great. Seriously, he's older than me. You've forgotten your schooling. But it is that kind of thing, right? Is that there is definitely a difference between hand and home and factory and then slave labour. Because obviously they do make it by hand, but they're paid a penny. And it's insulting to them to call it handmade because they're, doing it under duress, and usually with machinery, admittedly, but, they're doing it under duress, and it is usually of a really poor quality. But one of the things is when I was a kid, hand making things was normal. Your mother, nearly always mothers, made clothes, dresses, shirts, skirts, trousers, and the whole family wore them. Some of them were hideous, but that's not the point. They made clothes. They knitted things because it was cheaper. Today, you go down like the... No worries, Shay, I'm only really rabbiting and ranting at the end of my stream, to be honest, and because you guys are there and talking to me, so... what movie are you going to watch tonight? I was going to watch some form of Omen style movie. I forget what it was called. I've closed the thing. There was something on Disney Plus called Omen Ally or something. I was going to watch that. It's kind of a sci-fi, horror-y, deathy, scary thing. I was going to watch that. But it's midnight now, so I'm going to go to bed because I've got work in 6 hours. Yay! Anyway, it is a good time to stop because, I want to upload this and I'm not going to go to bed because it'll take a couple of hours to upload. But I will catch you next time. I will hopefully see you all at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So that's... I must have miscalculated earlier because it's 14 hours from now. So, anyway, night all. I shall see you again. And thank you for coming. Bye.